Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Monel Idrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. In today's podcast, I'll be speaking about the malignant psychopath, and this podcast is a follow-up from my previous one about the traumatized covert psychopath. Please note that this podcast could be very heavy for some people, so it does come with a warning. Okay, it will trigger you if you are going through this, and you may also get flashbacks from bad memories. Okay, so please approach this with caution and only listen if you're ready. The malignant psychopath is one of the worst types of people you'll ever come across in your life. So, it's not an easy one to listen to. Before I jump in, as always, please do like the podcast. If you find it helpful, please share it with people whom you feel could benefit from it. You can subscribe to the channel to be notified of future podcast releases, and you can also sign up to the newsletter on the website to receive emails about podcast releases and news. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, there's a link below that will take you to the information page about the services I offer. And if you'd like to speak to me, you just need to fill out the form, submit it, and I'll respond to you when I can. And if you haven't got the book already, do grab a copy. The podcasts are all supplementary to the book. I'd like to welcome as well everyone who is new to the channel. I pray that you benefit from it, you get the closure you need, and it helps you to understand yourselves and other people. And this is just a quick note. Some people have told me that they've signed up to the newsletter on the website, but they've not been receiving the emails. Please check your spam folder. Sometimes they do go in there. And if you don't find them in there, please resubscribe. Okay, just sign up to the mailing list again, because some of you have spelt your email addresses wrong, and that's why you're not getting any emails. Okay, so let's jump into the podcast. Bismillah. And I'll start with this. The malignant psychopath is in the worst category of 2 among shayateen al-ins. Okay, it's in the lowest level of nafs. And all narcissists are from shayateen al-ins, but of course on different levels. The worst 2 are the malignant psychopaths and the malignant sociopaths. Okay, so today I will focus on one. And for those who don't know, shayateen al-ins are devils in human form. Okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them in the Quran. In Surah Al-An'am, verse 112, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوهُ فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. And so we have made for every prophet enemies, demonic humans and jinn, whispering to one another with elegant words of deception. Had it been your Lord's will, they would not have done such a thing, so leave them and their deceit. Note that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا, and not وَكَذَلِكَ خَلَقْنَا. Okay, Allah says we have made for every prophet enemies, not we have created for every prophet enemies. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create anything evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has declared that demonic humans and jinn are enemies to the believers. And I will address the last part of this verse at the end of the podcast, inshallah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, had it been your Lord's will, they would not have done such a thing. So I will explain what that means at the end. So listen to the end if you want to find out. Okay, it'll all make sense then. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions them in Surah An-Nas. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Say, O Prophet, I seek refuge in the Lord of humankind. Malik nas, the King of humankind. Ilah nas, the one God of humankind. Min sharri al-waswas al-khannas, from the evil of the lurking whisperer. That's Iblis and your Qareen. الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس, who whispers into the hearts of humankind. من الجنة والناس, from among the jinn and humans. Okay, there are many humans who will whisper so many horrible things to you, and they will influence you. So you have to seek refuge from shayateen al-ins and shayateen al-jinn. Now, I've spoken a lot about narcissists, both covert and overt, And what makes the psychopath worse than the malignant narcissist is their intense psychological and spiritual damage that comes from their hyper-focus and abnormal obsession. Okay, like I said to you, the psychopath will focus on one victim at a time because they like to obtain people who are considered to be very high value. And to gain access to people who are very high value, it takes time, it takes dedication, and it takes a lot of patience. Okay, they need intelligence for it too. Because high value people tend to be smart, they tend to be self-aware, and they tend to have rare traits people admire. So it doesn't make it an easy challenge for the psychopath to take down someone of very high value. And that's why they become so obsessed. Okay, they love to set themselves a very high challenge. And this challenge comes from their soldier of Iblis. Okay, they want to disrupt and dismantle and destroy the best of people in our societies. So what makes someone high value differs between people. Okay, sometimes someone may think that someone who is extremely good looking is high value. Some people may think someone who is highly educated is high value. Someone may think, royal status or wealth or religion or spirituality, makes someone high value. Everyone is different. However, in this podcast, I will be speaking about those who are highly moral and those who have a high connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, those are the prime victims of those who are completely controlled by their qareen. Okay, because if you take down someone who is extremely good looking, you haven't really fulfilled a spiritual mission in the religious sense. You have just taken down someone who, their ego was very high because they were so good looking, and you have that satisfaction as a psychopath to destroy that by making them ugly, by making them fat, by making them hate themselves and, ruin their looks and everything, by encouraging them to do, plastic surgeries, for example, to make them ugly. But when it's a religious cause that causes you to take someone down as a psychopath, then the damage is worse, especially when it's from a moral standpoint, especially when it's from a spiritually damaging standpoint where you make someone hate Allah, when you make someone lose their faith, when you make someone, no longer believe in themselves. And this is exactly what Iblis did to Adam alayhi salam. He made him self-doubt. He made him disobey Allah. He made him lose faith in a critical moment when he was tested. And that is what makes the psychopath very dangerous. They know how to infiltrate your psyche in a way others can't. Okay, they can manipulate you to such a deep level that it will change your complete perception of the world and yourself and Allah and the deen, and you'll come out of that relationship with them a completely different person. And this psychopath in your life could be a parent, could be a spouse, could be a sibling, could be an adult child, could be a friend, could be anyone. Okay, you've got to be really careful. And you need to understand as well that these malignant psychopaths do not like to be seen or known as victims. They're not like narcissists, where they play the victim. The malignant psychopath will never accept to be a victim, even though they are the most valuable victims of their qareens. Okay, no one is more controlled and victimized by their qareen like the psychopaths and the sociopaths. They are owned by their qareens. Okay, they are actually a lot worse off than narcissists, even though they don't like to see themselves as victims. They love to be in great positions of power. They love to intimidate people, threaten people, scare people. They want people to look up to them and be terrified of them. So, of course, playing the victim role is only going to weaken their position with their victims. They're always going to want to show that they hold the power in every situation, to the point where they actually want to be worshipped. Okay, that's the malignant psychopath, the person who wants to be worshipped, the person who wants to be God. Like who? Like Pharaoh. Okay, he would tell his people, I am your Lord. I am your God. Worship me. He was a malignant psychopath and sociopath. He was the worst of the two, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used him as an example in the Quran to show people the level of damage and destruction they cause to not only those in their families but societies as a whole. Okay? Now, the malignant psychopath in your personal lives will play that same role. Okay? They will act like they are gods. They will act like they can do no wrong and that everything they do is correct. They are always right and that you must obey them no matter what, even if it goes against the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where they play God. They want you to obey them over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many psychopaths will tell you to do things that are haram so that you fall into shirk and so that you end up worshipping them. But you're not actually worshipping them as human beings. You are worshipping the soldier of Iblis who's been sent to them. And if you obey them, not only are you worshipping the soldier of Iblis who is sent to them, you are also obeying Iblis, because Iblis has issued the command to the Qareen, and this malignant psychopath is obeying the Qareen, and you are obeying the malignant psychopath, which makes you fall into shirk, and you end up obeying Iblis over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, you will know if someone wants to be worshipped if they keep asking you to do things against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to do. And if you fall into that level of shirk, you're in trouble. You are in very hot water. Okay, you have been captured by not only the soldier of Iblis in jinn form, but the one in human form. They've both got you by the neck. And in this situation, if this malignant psychopath is your parent, it is halal to cut them off, because your deen is in crisis right now. Okay, your iman is in jeopardy. In this situation, you can cut off your parent. You might say, oh, it's haram to say that you can cut off your parent. Well, tell that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you preferred, out of fear, to worship Iblis through this person than to do the right thing and distance yourself from a malignant psychopath who is completely destroying your deen and your connection to Allah. Okay, there are certain circumstances when you can cut off your parents when they are forcing you into shirk. And you can divorce somebody if they are forcing you into shirk, if they keep pressurizing you to do things that are haram. This is a psychopathic person who wants you to obey them, who wants you to worship them. You say, oh, you can't encourage divorce, this and that. Oh, tell that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tell him that you had a way out of that marriage, but you decided to stay because you felt a bit intimidated by someone who kept pushing you into shirk. It was easier for you to just oblige than do the right thing. Right? These are tests for us. Allah saved a whole nation from a man who kept pushing people into shirk. So take that as a major sign that the person you're with is a psychopath. Okay? They will even say to you, I am your God. I've heard this before, many times. Clients tell me that their husbands and their fathers tell them, I am your God. I am this and I am that. I am the all-hearing. I am the all-seeing. Bow to me. Wallahi, people say this. People are telling me that this is what they are being forced to do to stop a psychopath from beating them and causing all sorts of harm. They do it to maintain peace in the home. And they tolerate it for years. For years they are making sujood to a husband or a malignant father or even a crazy mother. They are doing these acts of worship to maintain the peace. And this is dangerous. This is something a lot of people are not talking about. Okay, because it happens a lot more than you think. It happens on a daily basis to lots of victims who are under the complete control of these psychopathic individuals. Okay, they will go around just saying it all the time. I am your Lord, I am your God. Some of them will do it via actions and others will say it out loud. And people may not believe it. People may not believe that, there are human beings who are capable of saying things like that there are humans who would dare to even say something like that. But when you don't understand the nature of malignant psychopaths, you will never be able to relate to that. You'll never be able to understand that level of insanity, that level of audacity. It is the highest level of arrogance that a human being can possess. And I won't say that it's the same level of arrogance as Iblis, because no one can top that. Iblis was in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He saw everything with his own eyes, and he still became arrogant. He still defied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But like I said to you in podcast 108, every arrogant person, every oppressor will be humbled by the experiences Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them. Okay, they will have many in this life to break this arrogance that they have. And if they wake up and repent, alhamdulillah. If they don't, they will face the consequences of their actions in this life and also in the next. So we know that they hate being victims of anyone, and they are delusional, and many are oblivious to the fact that they are slaves to their qareens, right? And this is why I'm creating these podcasts. It's for people to be aware of this so that inshallah they can get better and, break free from those shackles. When they are so delusional to the point where they believe that this is who they are, right? This power comes from them and not from their shayateen, then it causes them to spiral very quickly, right? It gives them this illusion of power that they believe comes from their own nafs, which is incorrect. They are being egged on by their qareen that has enslaved them. And they will be humiliated on the Day of Judgment when they become the ultimate victims to Iblis. Okay, in Surah Ibrahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 22, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إلا أن دعوتكم فاستجبتم لي فلا تلوموني ولوموا أنفسكم ما أنا بمصرخكم وما أنتم بمصرخي إني كفرت بما أشركتموني من قبل إن الظالمين لهم عذاب أليم. And the shaitan will say to his followers after the judgment has been passed, indeed, Allah has made you a true promise. I too made you a promise, but I failed you. I did not have any authority over you. I only called you and you responded to me. So do not blame me, because on that day they will blame Iblis. They will be victims. Oh, you made me do it. You made me this. You made me that. He will say, no. Blame yourselves. I cannot save you, nor can you save me. Indeed, I denounce your previous association of me with Allah in loyalty. Surely the wrongdoers will suffer a painful punishment. Now, you would think that a malignant psychopath who's an imam, or who reads Qur'an, or who understands Arabic, who understands the Qur'an, will take heed of a verse like this. But they can't, because they're not true believers. Okay, this is the sign, this is the indicator that malignant psychopaths are not believers. Okay, they are considered to be munafiqeen and also kuffar. They are out of the fold of Islam, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear and He warns everyone. This is what Iblis is going to say to you. But you read it and your delusional mind does not process it. You still think you are above this. You still believe that you can get away with it and that none of this is true. So you don't take it seriously as a psychopath. And that is how you commit shirk. This is how you place yourself as a psychopath above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why your downfall is the biggest. It's the heaviest. It's the deepest. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can save you at that point. Right? And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will corner the malignant psychopath into a hardship where he humbles himself or she humbles herself by submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and getting rid of that shirk. You now have to become a believer to be saved, because you're not a believer in that state. People who are dealing with malignant psychopaths are not dealing with believing people. It doesn't matter how much they read Qur'an. They could be memorizers of the Quran. They could be leading the prayer in the masjid every day. But if they are malignant psychopaths at home and they're forcing people to commit shirk, this person is a hypocrite. He is a top munafiq, the Muslim narcissist, the Muslim psychopath. This is what makes this person so dangerous, because they confuse people. Right? They appear very religious. They appear very knowledgeable. However, their actions speak otherwise. They do not implement what they read. And many people don't dare to say or claim that this imam is a hypocrite or their father is a hypocrite. They don't venture into that territory where they could get into serious trouble. So they stay silent and they just accept. So what is it that leads these people to become this way? Well, this can either be a progressive journey from being a covert psychopath or a traumatized psychopath, and it gets worse, because like I said, if they have enablers and flying monkeys who enable this behavior, they get worse, like narcissists do. Or it happens straight away from the age of puberty. Okay, so they just become very evil very early on in life. It's not a progression. Something happens in their life, for example, sexual abuse, that just makes them so mad, so angry, and they take it out on their victims. Their qareen jumps in. Remember I told you that the qareen will jump in from puberty. A qareen has no authority over a child. If you see a child acting out in a way that is demonic, the child is possessed by a jinn. And I'm not talking about, regular bad behavior that children sometimes display, their tantrums, their rages and all of that. It's very normal for children to act out in that way because they're still learning about the expression of emotions and how to do it properly and in a healthy way, and they're still learning right from wrong. So children will have behavior issues, and they will also copy the behavior of people in their lives who are psychopaths and narcissists and, just toxic people in general. Children will copy that behavior, and if they don't have anyone to copy from and they're not being guided properly by parents, they're just going to do what they think is correct. And that's why they, lash out and hit other kids and scream and shout and throw things. That's normal. I'm talking more about demonic behavior that's very calculated and very evil in nature. Okay? Now, no one is born evil. Everyone is born upon the fitrah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His justice, in His ultimate justice, creates everyone innocent. No one is born with sin like the Christians believe. We are born innocent. And it's our parents and our environment and our education that shapes the way we are. Okay, so we will copy the behavior of our parents, we will be influenced by the environment and so on, and that's why people grow up to be very different. But it's not normal for a toddler to be demonic in nature and calculated. And you will know this and understand it properly from horror films that feature very young children. Okay, let's take The Omen as an example. It's a very old film from 1976, which is about a child called Damien who is replaced at birth by his father after their own biological child dies. So he didn't tell the mother about it. And they take this child home and she's thinking this is her baby. And when the child becomes of age like 3 or 4, mysterious things start happening around the house, like violent deaths and, just creepy things. And then they find out later that this child is actually the Antichrist, right? He's the Dajjal. Now, I'm not talking about the story here. These stories can be made up. I'm talking about the children who are acting in adult movies. How can a 3 or 4-year-old play the role of a child who is evil, and they learn all their lines and they act so well at that age? How? It's demon possession. Have you ever wondered why they don't interview the main characters played by children in horror films? It's because they're possessed by the jinn. And in interviews, they often say strange things on camera that expose this, because they used to do it and then they stopped. So now they will not allow them to be interviewed, because it's not normal for a 3 or 4-year-old to, be able to learn all their lines in that way and act in that way unless they've been possessed by a jinn. It's a very dark world in the film industry. So when a child acts in a very violent way from such a young age, and especially when it happens suddenly, it's jinn possession. If it happens over time, then it's learned behavior. That's how you know the difference. When someone does sihr on someone and sends them an evil jinn to change their character, it happens very suddenly because it's something now seen out of character. This person is not normally like this, and all of a sudden, they're very evil. Or something happened to them to make them very evil. But if it's progressive behavior, then it's learned behavior. They're learning it from someone. They're copying someone. And malignant narcissists and psychopaths love to blame the jinn. They love to blame sihr for the way they are, right? When they get caught red-handed, their go-to ticket is usually, I've got a jinn, I've got this, I've got that. When actually it's not true, because you can see the progression in their disorder. And like I mentioned in the previous podcast, there are reasons for this, right? It starts from a trauma, either from childhood, and then it progresses to the teenage phase because they've had no one to help them process what happened in their childhood. And this is when the qareen, like I said, he jumps in here. Because the qareen knows he's wasting his time with a child who's not going to be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for any mistakes and sins that they commit, right? They are the responsibility of their parents at that age. But you are held accountable from the age of puberty. So now the work of the qareen has value. He knows now that his work has started. And that's not to say that children don't get intrusive thoughts. They do. But the intrusive thoughts are intended to create chaos for the parents. Okay, so for example, you get two children standing on the edge of a swimming pool. And then suddenly you see one of them push the other into the pool. For no reason whatsoever. They just acted on impulse. And it looks like an intrusive thought came into their mind and they acted upon it. That's usually the qareen. However, the difference is that a child is not held accountable for that mistake. The parent is meant to correct the child. Okay, the parent, because they're responsible for a child before the age of puberty, they are the ones who are meant to come and correct that behavior. So the parent takes it on as their responsibility to discipline the child and teach the child that this was wrong. It's cruel, it's mean, it's dangerous. You shouldn't do that to other children. Why did you do that? Let's sit down, let's talk about why you would do something like that to your brother or to your friend. You can't be pushing people like that. What was the reason? So you allow the child to express their emotions and to critically think. And then they learn. And this is why in Islam, children before the age of puberty must obey their parents. Because if they don't obey their parents, the qareen takes over. However, in adulthood, the obedience is replaced with respect and mercy. Okay, show them humility, show them mercy, because now the decisions that you make for your own life, you'll be accountable for. Your parents are no longer responsible for the decisions you take after that. Okay, after you're old enough to live your own life. You no longer have to obey your parents in matters that, you have your own control over. So for example, in what you want to study, as long as what you want to study is halal, you don't need to obey your parents if they want you to do something else. If you want to pursue a halal job and your parents don't want you to do that, then again, you don't have to obey them in that situation. You must respect them, but you don't have to obey them as long as what you're doing is halal. Okay, you take their opinions into consideration, but the obedience is actually for that time. You must obey your parents. And this was something taught to young children from a very young age. You must obey your parents, because if they don't, the qareen will take over with the intrusive thoughts. And that's when parents will experience more behavior issues in their kids. And, children are also meant to obey their parents as adults if the parents are correcting them. Okay, so if the adult children, want to pursue a haram career, they want to pursue something that's not right Islamically, then they must obey the parents when the parents tell them that it's wrong and you can't do this. Okay, that respect has to be there. That's where the respect comes in. That's where the mercy and the humility comes in, because you must honor the way these parents raised you. If they raised you to always do the right thing, and you now want to pursue something that's considered to be forbidden or makruh in Islam, then you are dishonoring them, you're disrespecting them, because they spent so many years raising you to be good. So when they tell you, no, you cannot pursue this career, or you cannot marry this person, you must obey them, because they are saving you from something haram or from future harm. In these situations, you must obey your parents. Otherwise, you can pursue whatever you want if it's halal and if it's respectful and if it doesn't harm your parents. Okay, you're not harming your parents by doing something that's considered to be good. Now, when parents do not correct their children from a young age, they will often find that by the teenage phase, they are unbearable to live with. They are monsters. And that's why teenagers switch as soon as they enter puberty, if they haven't been corrected properly or parented properly in their childhood. They've now normalized a lot of toxic behavior. They were not stopped or corrected when they pushed kids into the pool. And now they become school bullies. Now they feel a sense of entitlement to just do whatever they want and be mean to whoever they want, because no one was there to listen to them, to talk to them, to teach them, to discipline them. They didn't have a healthy upbringing. So it now becomes normalized behavior to harm other people. So as soon as they enter the teenage phase, they get 10 times worse, because the qareen has taken advantage of that. The qareen will take advantage of any child who was not raised properly. And that's why they suddenly turn into monsters from the age of puberty. And even if they did have a good upbringing, some teenagers will be affected by waswas, and it's awful. They will become awful in their behavior. And then, psychologists say, well, this is normal. All teenagers are like this. They're all stroppy, they're all rude, they're all this and that. No, it's not normal. This is the qareen, because it's the qareen's prime time to start work. And that's why they suddenly switch and they just become really rude overnight. They start answering back. They weren't like that before. They didn't have that level of audacity and arrogance before. But they switch like that when they enter this phase of life. And that's why, teenagers dabble in so many sins, and all of a sudden they're smoking and they're doing drugs and this and that. And, psychologists put it down to hormones. It's not hormones at all. This is the qareen taking over. So if it's left unchecked, if these teenagers are not held accountable by people in the community, by uncles, by aunties, by older siblings, by parents, then it will escalate. And it will become normalized behavior, especially if it's violent. Okay, that's why you have teenagers who, they find stabbing normal. Right? They come from an environment where stabbing other people is normal. They grow up becoming very malignant and violent, because if stabbing was normal when they were 17, then what are they going to do in their 30s and 40s? Right? Those are the people who end up murdering other people, because physical violence is normal in their environment or normal in their home. When people can get away with bad behavior, especially when it's violent and aggressive during childhood and during the teenage phase, they will be more likely to become malignant and physically malignant later in life. So I did go through in detail the main reasons as to why people become psychopaths in my previous podcast. So I'll just go over the 3 main reasons as to why malignant psychopaths can become physically violent and dangerous. The first one is sexual abuse that happens during childhood at the hands of a family member, or even in the teenage phase at the hands of a family member, or both. It happened in both the childhood and the teenage phase. And the rage and anger and humiliation from that caused them to become physically violent later, as that is how they express their emotions and what they couldn't tell anyone. Okay, lots of these people bottle up these feelings inside, and they will either take revenge on their abusers, like the Menendez brothers, or they will lash out at everybody. Okay, especially the victims they choose to marry. They will lash out at their parents later in life as well, and their siblings and their friends and colleagues. And even if they become CEOs and managers, they can take it out on their employees. So you'll notice that they're just horrible to people for no reason whatsoever. And that's because of bottled up emotions. And they will blame parents for turning a blind eye to the sexual abuse that happened, especially if it was at the hands of an uncle or a cousin or someone who was babysitting for them. And even if the parents didn't know about it, this psychopath will hold a lot of resentment towards their parents for the neglect. Okay, they will feel neglected by their parents to the point where people took advantage of them sexually. And this can also happen when parents take their children to the local mosque and they get molested by the imam. Right, they get sexually abused by religious people in authority. So this causes a lot of malignant psychopaths to take it out on religious people later. They hate religious people. Do you really think that someone who abuses Islam to harm others is someone who loves the deen? This is someone who hates Islam. They hate religion. They hate the way they were raised to see it. They hate the people in authority who abuse them, like imams and religious teachers and so on. So they take it out on people later in life and they physically abuse those people because they believe those people deserve to be punished. They believe everyone's a hypocrite. They believe everyone behind closed doors is a paedophile or something. And they will not let their children go to the mosque. They may not even go to the mosque themselves. But they will use Islam to control and dominate other people the same way they felt dominated, the same way they felt oppressed by Islam and people who were considered to be religious. And sometimes you'll find that the most religious, strict, militant people who impose Islam on everyone are not religious themselves. They don't pray. They don't go for Jummah. They will skip Ramadans. They won't fast Ramadan. But Sharia applies to everyone but not them. Because deep down they don't like it. Deep down they resent it. Deep down they're not believers, that's why. But they've just found an opportunity to use it to empower themselves. Okay, because using the God card is very effective for narcissists and psychopaths. They know it's the weak point of many people who want to please Allah. They know that it's the Achilles heel of people who want to do right by Allah and they fear Allah. Okay? So people who are abused by people who are considered to be religious are those who end up hating Islam growing up, and they are a danger to Islam. They become the hypocrites in society because of what happened to them. They never got closure for what happened. They never had an answer or an explanation for what happened. So they grow up with lots of anger towards the religious community. And Iblis uses his soldiers to take advantage of this. And that's why it's these people who ruin the image of Islam for other people. And that's what their mission is in life, to destroy Islam for believers by the way they are and the way they implement it in their lives and the way they force it upon people. These are the people who drive people out of Islam. Mission accomplished. You see, that's how the Qareen jumps on this train of trauma with this particular psychopath. Please be careful who you leave your children with. Be careful before you just leave your children with any imam who will teach them Quran and Arabic and all of that in the mosque. Because as we've seen lately, and for many years, many imams have been caught sexually molesting young children. And they are the reason why so many people are growing up to be malignant psychopaths. And of course, I'm not generalizing here. There are so many amazing imams, but you need to do your due diligence now. More and more people are being arrested for sexual crimes towards children. Okay, and it's happening in religious spaces because they assume that people would not suspect them. Okay, they do not think that people would believe that imams could do such a thing, or Quran teachers, or Arabic teachers. You've got to be really careful because this is the consequence. And don't get me started on the so-called religious parents who sexually abuse their own children. This may be really difficult for some people to comprehend, but there are fathers who do that. There are mothers who sexually abuse their own daughters from a very young age, from toddler age. And they stay silent because it's been normalized. And then you wonder why people turn malignant, why people turn into psychopathic human beings because of this rage. They've never been able to tell anyone about it. And so they've expressed themselves violently and aggressively. I'm not giving anyone an excuse here. I'm just explaining what's happened to many people who end up killing people, who end up murdering people in cold blood, who end up physically assaulting everyone they have a romantic relationship with, and why they hate sex, why they cannot be intimate with anyone. And when they do, it's strange and vulgar. It repulses them. So many married couples have these issues because they don't realize that the husband or wife was sexually molested by a family member or their parent when they were young, and they can't tell you about it. In the documentary Monsters on Netflix, the Menendez brothers were framed as horrific, horrible people because they'd murdered their parents. So in the beginning, you do see them as monsters, like, oh, what kind of horrible people would murder such wonderful parents who gave them everything, right? They're very wealthy and they had a very good lifestyle. So when people first found out that they were the killers, they were shamed, they were hated, and, all of that. And then when you find out the reason why later, when they finally managed to talk about the sexual abuse that their father put them through as young boys, you start to sympathize with them. You now start to understand why they murdered their parents, right? Because of that pent-up rage. For years, they had been fantasizing about murdering their parents. They hated their parents despite everything they gave them. It did not make up for that trauma. That trauma never goes away, ever. So many people do not know that they live with psychopaths who have so much pent-up rage towards them, and they fantasize about revenge all the time. And that's scary. So, there are some psychopaths who will direct their rage to their abusers only, like the Menendez brothers. And there are some psychopaths, like I said, who are more dangerous because they take it out on everyone else. They didn't have a chance to take revenge on their abusers for whatever reason. So they direct it towards people who remind them of their trauma, who trigger them, who are soft, who take abuse, who tolerate everything that they put them through, and so on. They are the more dangerous type because they target innocent people. But the psychopath, who is more self-aware, will only take their revenge from those who abuse them initially. Because in their minds, this is the only way to put an end to their trauma. Okay? So murder becomes the solution. If I get rid of my abuser, I will have some closure. I will have some, justice. And in their minds, it's the only way. I just can't live to see this person's face anymore. I can't bear to see them walking around anymore. I have to get rid of them. So that aggression and that, killer instinct comes out to eliminate the problem. It's not because they're hateful people, as a lot of people tend to assume. Some people just believe that if they kill these people, then their problem is over. Because they will get triggered over and over and over again the more they see them, especially if they are family members. Okay, and that's why so many people kill their family members. Their fathers, their uncles, their cousins. You find them, one day randomly waking up and just getting a gun out and shooting them. And you're like, what happened? They were such good friends. Everyone was, everyone got along and everything was fine. One day he woke up and he just decided to kill his father. It's usually for this kind of reason. And if it's not sexual abuse, then it's going to be another type of physical abuse. And I'll go on to the next point in a moment. But this happens, and it happens a lot. And it's very rare for psychopaths to be, targeting every single person in their sight. You will find that they're very nice to some people, but they target specific people. Okay? So If you look at the pattern of the people whom they target, you'll understand what their trigger is. No one is 100% evil with everybody. There will be some people who they like and they will leave alone. And the people they tend to leave alone often remind them of who they were as children. So, for example, in the series You, Joe Goldberg develops a protective relationship with Paco, the little boy, and he lives in the same building and he suffers from his mother's neglect and his stepfather's physical abuse. So Joe sees Paco as a younger version of himself, and he tries to protect him by lashing out at the stepfather and, protecting him in that kind of way and justifying the violence as love. He wants to save this little boy in a way he couldn't be saved as a child from his own parents. So you'll find that both the traumatized covert psychopath will do this and also the malignant psychopath will do this. They always have a soft spot for someone or specific people. And even if they don't have soft spots for people, they may have soft spots for animals. So let's say a traumatized child who was abused by his parents sought comfort in his pet dog at the time. He will grow up loving dogs and saving dogs, and he will do so much for dogs in rescues and charity and all sorts of things. That's when you see their human side, right? The malignant psychopath also has a kind side. They have an empathic side. No one is completely void of empathy. There will be something from their childhood they hold on to as a good memory that helped them cope with all the abuse. It could be an elderly man, a neighbour. They might grow up feeling, empathy for elderly people because this elderly man next door used to comfort him and bring him sweets and treats and things like that when he saw that he was, going through a rough time with his parents. It may be, his teacher or a homeless person who comforted him. And when I say he, I mean she as well, if the woman is a malignant psychopath. But more often than not, it's usually pets. And that's why you find malignant psychopaths, they love animals. And if they don't love animals and they're evil to animals as well, then more often than not, they had bad experiences with animals when they were young. Okay, like being bitten by a dog, scratched by cats, things like that. They grow up being really cruel to animals. And of course, the worst of all malignant psychopaths are those who just harm people and creatures for no reason whatsoever. They'll rip plants out and throw them on the street. They will run over cats on the road just for the fun of it. They will do all sorts of horrible things to people and creatures because they get a thrill from abusing the vulnerable. They are oppressors. So this is the kind of malignant psychopathy that is very difficult to treat because of how much they enjoy harming other people. Okay, these are the most dangerous psychopaths out there. They have no remorse for oppressing the vulnerable creatures and humans, especially children. Children and animals, when you abuse them in a way where, you just get a thrill out of it, you're satanic, full stop. It's very difficult to help people like this. Very, very difficult. Only Allah can help someone like that by giving them an absolute disaster to deal with in their own lives. That will humble them and bring them back to reality, if that's even possible for them. If they have the right people around them who will encourage them to reflect in that kind of way. Sometimes without that support, people can't. So when the calamity comes down upon that person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to wake up to the tragedy of their actions, right? The repercussions of these actions. And where does Allah hit them? In their soft spot. So the calamity will fall upon them where they have some empathy towards someone or something. And this is what usually sends them spiraling. Okay, this kind of person really struggles to cope when they are hit in their soft spot. Their whole life will fall apart. And this is where some of them find Allah again, because Allah puts them in a corner where they can only, turn to Him for help. Like Pharaoh. Okay, that's where they're cornered. Some are still arrogant like Pharaoh. Go back to my podcast 108 to understand what I mean in depth. Some of them are still arrogant and then they die in that way. They die with that arrogance. They die as disbelievers despite every lifeline Allah sent them. And others do wake up. when they've lost absolutely everything and they lose the dearest thing to them or the dearest person to them, the one person they loved, the one child they thought the world of, that dog who lived with them, for like 20 plus years. When that dog dies, that's it. Their world comes crashing down. So, there is hope for them to change if they wake up to the hikmah, the wisdom behind the loss of that precious thing or person who helped them cope with life. Okay, this thing or this person gave them a purpose to their life. And when they're removed, they feel like, khalas, they've lost everything. There's nothing left. And this is where they either get worse, because now they've got nothing to lose, right? Got nothing to lose in my life, I'm just going to go full throttle on this, all guns blazing on everybody. Or they wake up. It's their choice at that point. And it's their jihad and nafs to fight their qareen and do what's right by themselves and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, it's not impossible for them to change. And that's why I say, no one is left without a lifeline. Every single person on this planet and throughout history has been given lifelines by Allah out of mercy and out of love for them. Because Allah knows they are prisoners of their qareen from the PTSD. PTSD comes from the qareen. It is a mental health disorder. Chronic waswas is what causes PTSD and also OCD. A lot of people suffer from their waswas. They live in the past, and because they live in the past, they become very dangerous individuals. Therapy doesn't really help people like this. When you reach the malignant psychopath stage, only Allah can help you. No amount of therapy is going to help, because you don't have the mental capacity to process what the therapist is telling you, because you are completely and utterly controlled by your qareen who doesn't want you to listen to what's being said. However, you can make use of content to be self-aware about your condition and your disorder so that you can at least attempt to help yourself. These days, with all the information that's out there, there's no excuse, right? You can read books about childhood trauma, you can read books about how prophets dealt with calamities. You can read so many things that will help you. And the right Islamic preachers, the empathic preachers who malignant narcissists and psychopaths hate with a passion, are the ones who are going to help you learn about Allah's mercy and Allah's kindness and Allah's lifelines for you. Because the reason why malignant psychopaths hold on to their, soft spot, you could say, their pets or small children who remind them of them as children, or elderly people, the reason why they hold on to them and show kindness to them is because those people or those creatures remind them that they're human. They give them some hope that there is goodness in them. Okay, especially when they get a hug from a little boy who they help, or, they do a favor for an old man who was kind to them when they were younger. Like they may find pleasure in fixing things for him, or taking him shopping, or buying him things, or, taking him to the doctors. You think, oh, he's so horrible to us at home, but he's so kind to that old man. He's so kind to that little boy. A lot of victims tell me that. They say the malignant psychopath in their life is a monster at home, an absolute nightmare. But there's this man who he's so nice to. There's this child who he's so nice to. They say he treats dogs so much better than he treats his own family members. There's a reason for that. It's because those dogs and that elderly man and that little boy make him feel somewhat normal, that there is good in him, and he likes being around them because they look up to him. They see him as a hero. They see him as someone who, who's not a monster. He has allowed them into a very vulnerable part of his life where they can see the good in him. And lots of people ask me, why do you help these malignant psychopaths, and why do you help narcissists? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. Well, it benefits you for them to be helped. Because if they're helped, you stop getting abused. So if we can reduce the number of abusers in society, it will help everyone else. As less people will get, victimized by these horrible predatory people, and everyone's happy, alhamdulillah. Or at least a lot more people will be. Okay, you will never be able to eradicate evil completely from a society. No one ever could. That's not the nature of this dunya. We have the challenge of fighting the evil in this world and overcoming it so that it doesn't spread. This is the corruption of the land, right? When we allow corruption and evil to spread in every home and every society until it becomes a part of the ummah, which is what's happened now. You will never be able to eradicate it completely because Iblis is always there and Iblis always has his soldiers. But we can at least stop enabling all of this. There's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari where Anas radiallahu anhu said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم انصر أخاك ظالما أو مظلوما قالوا يا رسول الله هذا ننصره مظلوما فكيف ننصره ظالما قال تأخذ فوق يديه. So the Prophet ﷺ said, help your brother or sister whether he is an oppressor or he is an oppressed one. So the people asked him, O Allah's Messenger, we understand that we should help him if he is oppressed, but how do we help him if he is the oppressor? The Prophet ﷺ said, by preventing him from oppressing others. Okay, so in Islam, you should never enable the behavior of anyone who is oppressive. And every narcissist and every psychopath is an oppressor. So if you don't help them, they're just going to get worse. And if they get worse, they're going to affect many more people and victimize more women and children. And the whole world just becomes a chaotic mess. Okay, so helping them helps you. It's not, it's not because we should show kindness to them and they deserve that kindness. No. At the end of the day, there's wisdom in what the Prophet ﷺ says. It makes sense. If we don't help them, then we're the ones who suffer. And we do that by holding more people accountable. We need more authoritative figures. We need more people to tell women and children and, and men as well to stop tolerating this behavior. Stop, being patient with this kind of behavior. Stop giving people the advice to be patient. Sabr, sabr, sabr. Yeah, what did that do? Where did that get us? It got us here. It got us here. People who are being forced to deal with psychopathic parents and psychopathic husbands and psychopathic wives in the name of Islam for the sake of Allah. Where's that got us? It's got us in this mess. This goes against the advice of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, stop the oppressors from oppressing people by not enabling them. But actually, what's happening is that preachers are doing the opposite. They are forcing everybody, and guilt-tripping them with Islam to be patient with this kind of abuse and this kind of psychopathy. Until what? Until people get murdered. Until children get murdered, women get murdered, men get murdered. Yep, there's a lot of that happening as well by psychopathic women. Why? Because preachers told them to be patient. Preachers told them to tolerate. And people stayed for the sake of Allah out of fear that they would be displeasing to Allah if they were to leave or if they were to take action against the oppressor. People are told to fear Allah. This is your husband, this is your father, this is your mother. But they're psychopathic, they're malignant, they're dangerous people. So this is why I'm recording these, because the advice that's been given for too long by these preachers has caused our ummah to fall into this deep pit of fire. And too many people are now dealing with malignant psychopaths in their lives. It's a disease that's spread because of terrible advice. And it's not just affected the victims, it's made malignant psychopaths worse. It's made narcissists escalate into becoming malignant. And that's why we have way more murder cases now than way before. Every other day now you hear of, manslaughter, you hear of murder, you hear of a man killing his wife and children. This is happening far more than we would like to know because of the enabling that's happening. We never used to hear about these things as much as we do now. But it's because women are being pushed and there's no help for women to get out. And everyone's being cornered in the name of Islam, to stay in these horrific marriages. There's nowhere for women to escape to. We don't have enough men in our communities who are protecting the rights of women and children. So inshallah, this advice will help the narcissists and psychopaths to stop them, inshallah, from getting to that stage and having a horrible end to their life in both the dunya and akhirah, and also to protect the victims. So, I'm going to continue now with the reasons why, people end up being really dangerous and physically abusive and, until it results in murder. But I just wanted to put that there in the middle of the podcast, because sometimes when narcissists and psychopaths listen to a podcast and then feel there's no hope, they don't listen to the rest of the podcast. They just listen to so much of, what's wrong with them, and then they give up and don't listen to the end. So sometimes I insert the hopeful bits in the middle so that, they can be encouraged to listen to the end, inshallah, and get the help they need. I feel sorry for them more than anything because of how badly they've wasted their lives when they could have done so much good in the world and, become great people. So I struggle to hate them. I just feel sorry for them. I feel sorry that they have become weak prisoners of their qareen. Some people think that these malignant psychopaths are the most powerful people, and actually they are the weakest of people because their qareen controls them most of the time. They are prisoners to these jinns. Okay, so how can you ever be powerful when you are a prisoner? When you are a victim of an entity you yourself have more power over. If a human being has more power over Iblis himself, then imagine how weak you must be to be a victim of one of his soldiers. Okay, so Iblis only targets powerful people who can overcome their qareens. He, goes after them. He doesn't go after the psychopaths who have a level of nafs that's already very low. Because as far as he's concerned, the mission is complete. It's already been done by his soldiers. Okay. So let's move on to this second reason as to why psychopaths become very physically violent and dangerous. And this comes after the trauma of sexual abuse in childhood, and that is physical abuse. Okay, so for example, someone was severely beaten by his father when he was young, with all sorts of things, with sticks, with canes, with whips, with whatever you can think of. Those children who are severely physically abused grow up with a lot of internal pent-up anger, especially when this physical abuse was inflicted on them by the father. Okay, because they needed a good role model, they needed a good father figure. And this could be girls or boys who were physically abused by their fathers. They grow up with a lot of hate. And because this becomes very normalized violence, they take it with them into adulthood. And sometimes this violence starts in the teenage phase. Okay, so it may not have happened in the childhood period, but it did when they became teenagers and they, became rebellious a bit. They're listening to their qareens, and their fathers became extremely abusive. The pent-up anger can cause someone to become psychopathic. And when they get married, they become the same kinds of people with their own spouses and children. Okay, they don't have that empathy to not do it to their own children. Okay, if they're still angry, if they are still, living in that bitterness, then they will take it out on their own wife and children as well, because it's normalized abuse. Women will also do it to their husbands and children. Some women who are severely beaten by their parents will take it out on their own families later in life. They will beat their husbands, they will throw chairs at them, knives, keys, you name it, and they'll do the same to their children. And then when their children find out that it happened to them when they were younger, they'd say, Mum, why would you do this to us? You went through this. Like, well, yeah, because I went through it, you're going to go through it. This is how you're going to learn. This is how we learned how to behave. This is how we learned this, and this is how we learned that. So they take it out on their children because it's their way of releasing trauma, but they cause more chaos in their lives by doing that because they have no idea how to express themselves in a healthy way and how to get rid of all this anger that's still within them. They hate their parents. They fantasize about, killing their parents all the time. And then when they implement this behavior in their own personal lives, it builds up to a point where it can lead to murder. Okay, the physical violence is so bad, they keep sending their spouses to hospital with broken ribs, broken noses, broken legs, everything. And unfortunately, it continues because it's either tolerated or feared. People stay out of fear, or people continue to tolerate because they keep getting hoovered. When you're in this kind of situation, the malignant psychopath will always hoover you back in. They'll be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, after they've broken half your bones. I'm sorry this and I'm sorry that, because they don't want you to tell anyone. And they don't want you to tell anyone because they want to continue. And that's what happens. Every time you forgive them and you decide to stay, it gets so much worse. People tell you have to leave. The police will tell you. The nurses in the hospital will tell you. Counsellors will tell you. And you're like, nope, I'm going to stay. For whatever reason, I'm not judging people here. But this toleration is what causes people to end up in their grave. Again, the terrible advice of preachers to have sabr. Mediators come in, he's sorry, he's repented, give him a chance, people make mistakes, this, that, and then people stay. And then before you know it, you see in the news, husband kills his wife and children. The same woman who went to the imam a week ago, 2 weeks ago, she's now in the news. She was killed by a gunshot, or pushed off a cliff, or driven into the sea. Whatever it is, you hear it all the time. Because people kept ignoring the pleas of this woman, the pleas of the children. No one helped. There was no help. And people didn't take it seriously, and the victims didn't take it seriously. And it's usually because in many communities, violence is normalized. It's normal for a father to, beat his wife black and blue. It's just a part of the culture. It's normal for kids to be beaten with sticks and canes and belts and whatnot. It's normalized behavior, so people don't take it seriously until it gets really, really bad. And the main indicator that someone is malignant or is turning malignant is when the threats start coming. Okay, so before any physical violence happens, they will start to threaten you with it. They threaten you with, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to whatever. I'm not going to say these things, and I don't want to trigger people, but they will start threatening you with physical violence. And then they'll take it a step further and start threatening you with murder. So they'll say things like, if you do this, I'll kill you. If you don't do this, I'll kill you. And they will maybe list all the ways that they'll do it as well. And this is how honor killings happen, and how physical violence in marriages starts. Especially when, a man has grown up to see his father beat his mother and his sisters, and no one did anything about it. The mother took it. The sisters took it. He grows up seeing that as powerful. Like, wow, I can assert my dominance with physical violence. He learns that behavior. So if he's not caught early enough, he will normalize it and then implement it in his life later, because his father did it. His older brothers did it. His uncles did it. It was very normal. And, boys from a young age, they love to assert power, especially when their fathers are very dominant. Okay, they want to learn how to do that as well. So when they see that the mother is tolerant of this behavior, what he learns is, this is what I have to do to get a woman to obey me, to get a woman to listen, to get a woman to behave. I need to resort to physical violence. And then the cycle continues. You see, this is what happens with these types of boys. And, you get empaths as well, empathic boys and families who decide to do the complete opposite because they don't listen to their qareen. And they take the moral stand, which is, I don't want to be anything like my dad. When I have children, inshallah, when I get married, I'm going to be merciful, I'm going to be loving, I want to be nothing like my father. But other children who have low self-esteem, maybe they're bullied at school, or they have insecurities that causes them to copy the behavior of their dominant fathers so that they can have some confidence and also authority. And it can lead to all sorts of problems. And physical violence as well when done in the name of Islam, is even more damaging because it causes many people to leave Islam later. So, for example, if a child or an adult has a trauma of being beaten every time they had to learn Quran or learn Arabic or to pray, they will grow up hating Islam because they associate it with physical violence. So they might rebel against it in childhood or even in the teenage phase, and then later on in life they leave Islam altogether because it just brings them bad memories. The way they learned about Islam brings them bad memories. It was associated with violence. Okay, and this is satanic work. This is the fantastic work of the Qareen that causes people to leave Islam because the teachers, the parents, teachers and imams, did it in such a violent way that it made people hate it. And many women have left Islam because of the physical violence as well that's done in the name of Islam. It's done in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the name of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, this is wrong and this is oppression. But it really is no surprise that so many women have no longer associated themselves with Muslim communities and the faith. You know, when their husbands beat their children, to punish them and teach them a lesson in the name of Islam is going to cause many people to leave it. Okay, many children are beaten black and blue to teach the spouse a lesson. They harm the children as a punishment for the spouse. And you think that these children are not going to grow up with hatred and bitterness. Of course they will. They will grow up with so much anger towards their parents because they were the pawns in the situation and they knew it. Every time their father wanted to punish their mother, they would take the hit. They would be the ones to take the punishment because they knew that their mother would be tortured seeing it and she couldn't do anything about it. So even though they don't blame the mother, they will hold resentment towards her for not being able to defend them when their fathers constantly beat them. Children will always resent parents who are weak and who don't defend their rights and who don't stand up for them. Parents do end up suffering in old age when their own children don't want to be around them later because they never defended them. They never stood up for them. Even though the children understand, but still they do hold that resentment. Okay, you can't be weak as a parent. You have to be willing to stand up for your children when you see them get oppressed by their father or their mother. You cannot stand by and let them get beaten because those children, those same children you are not defending, can grow up to be malignant psychopaths who will take out their wrath on you and other people. It happens. Okay, and then this level of violence can lead to, like I said, homicide, which is the act of one person causing the death of another human being, and it's a general term that encompasses both lawful killings, such as justifiable self-defense, and unlawful killings. So, for example, they might justify this murder by saying, well, she was going to leave me, or my wife cheated on me and I had to end her life, or my wife left Islam, I needed to punish her properly for the apostasy, or, I was defending myself, she was lashing out at me. They will justify the cause. Okay, even if it results in a'udhu billah, someone killing his own children to punish the spouse, he'll say, well, she made me do it. She made me kill my own children because she drove me crazy. She doesn't know how to look after her children. She was going to take the children away from me. She was going to divorce me and take them. She was going to do this, she was going to do that. I killed them to teach her a lesson, or to stop her from taking them or making them non-Muslims, etc. I killed them. This is what homicide is. When they justify what they did to make it look reasonable and acceptable. Okay, even if they claim it to be revenge. They might say, oh, she hurt me or he hurt me and I took revenge on them by taking their life. Right? They can make those excuses to justify homicide, but only the courts can decide what is considered to be a lawful killing or not. And it's only ever really in self-defense when someone is being brutally attacked by someone who is clearly the abuser and not a victim, when it gets ruled as a lawful killing. So telling a judge that, I killed my daughter, for example, because she was speaking to a man or she was dating a man is not considered to be a lawful killing. This is an unlawful killing. You're not allowed to do this in Islam. But people justify their murder by saying things like she brought dishonor to the family, she brought shame to the family, she did this and he did that, and then they make it halal for them to take someone's life. And murder, on the other hand, is the intentional killing of another person, which is rooted in malice or the evil intent to cause serious harm. So the reason here is not justified. And manslaughter is the unlawful killing that lacks the required intent for murder. So this includes involuntary manslaughter, for example, death through recklessness or negligence. Okay, so for example, someone is speeding down the motorway, they're racing someone else, and then in the process they hit another car and they accidentally kill someone who they didn't intend to kill. Okay, there was no intention of harming anyone. They were racing down the motorway, being really reckless with the speed that they're going at, and then someone dies in the process in a car crash. That's manslaughter. So I just wanted to make a distinction between the three so that you can understand the difference between primarily homicide and murder. And more often than not, by the time they get to that stage of homicide or murder, they see no value to their life. Okay, because they know they could either go to prison for life or they will end up running away from the police. They're on the run for the rest of their life. They keep changing their identity. They keep running so that they don't get caught. That's another thing. Or they end up killing themselves as well. Okay, so once someone reaches that level of malice and malignant behavior, they usually end their own lives, because they realize that, there's nothing left. There's no value for my life, no value in myself. And they also reach an extreme level of arrogance and delusion to make them think that they've won. Like, I got what I wanted now. My mission is complete. I have, murdered my wife, murdered my parents, murdered my co-worker, whoever it is that they wanted to get rid of. They see themselves as having completed their mission. And after that, they don't care what happens. And that's why many of them commit suicide. Many of them end their lives because their life mission has ended. That's all they wanted to do in this life, to end their trauma or complete their satanic mission. Once that's done, the shaitan makes them kill themselves or makes them fall into a deeper pit of narcissism and psychopathy, and you see it because their behavior gets worse and they show no remorse at all because they don't feel it. When a malignant psychopath gets caught and they get taken to court and they're imprisoned, they don't care. They genuinely don't care because they believe they got what they wanted. I can now rot in peace in jail for the rest of my life because I got rid of my trauma. I got rid of the people who caused me my trauma, or I got rid of the person who gave me such a hard time because they wanted to leave me. They saw my true colors, they saw my real face, they wanted to leave, they wanted to report me to the authorities. I had to get rid of them. She wasn't going anywhere. She wasn't going to get married to anyone else. No one else was going to have her. I had to end her life. And now I can go to jail in peace knowing that no one else is going to marry her. No one else is going to have her or him. So that's why they show no remorse. The malignant psychopath will never show remorse in court because their intrusive thoughts from the qareen tell them, well done. You completed your mission and now it's time to go. That's why so many of them commit suicide in jail, because Iblis wants them to do that, to end their life on that note, on that sin. If Iblis manages to get the malignant psychopath to commit suicide in jail without any repentance, without any remorse, without feeling any guilt, then Iblis has won. And sometimes when the malignant psychopath is imprisoned, many psychologists who are brought in to assess their behavior say that they did it out of a severe mental health disorder because of how influenced they are by the qareen. obviously they don't believe in these spiritual issues. They don't believe in the jinn. They don't believe in, everyone having a soldier of Iblis with them in their life. So they can't explain the strange behavior of malignant psychopaths when they keep switching their mood. They switch their mood, the way they speak, no remorse, they laugh, they cry, they have erratic mood swings when they're interviewed. And psychologists put it down as, a severe mental health disorder, and that's why he or she murdered somebody. That's why he or she committed homicide and so on. Because they say he's not normal in the head. If you sit with him for 5 minutes, you'll know he's just not normal. Yes, because he's got severe waswas. It's not always jinn possession. And by the way, I'll tell you that the malignant psychopath rarely gets possessed by jinn. And it's simply because the evil jinn don't waste their time with people who are already corrupt. Okay, so if you see someone who is so evil and they are consistently evil, okay, so they were maybe narcissistic before and then they, escalated to the psychopath level, and then they say, oh, it's just jinn, I'm possessed by a jinn. It's often not true, because the jinn do not possess people who already have a very low level of nafs. The jinn possess good people, and that's why you get the switch. Okay, they usually possess people who are innocent, people who are good, people who have faith, people who are empaths, and so on. When people do sihr on good people, they often switch, don't they? They often start becoming very angry, becoming very, strange in their behavior. It's because the jinn is sent to corrupt someone good. But if your level of nafs is already so low and it's in the habit of always making the wrong decisions and obeying the qareen, then the evil jinns won't waste their time. And I've noticed that with the malignant psychopath, the only type of jinn they tend to attract, if they do have an external one, in addition to the qareen, is the ashiq jinn. Okay, and maybe I'll do another podcast about that another time. But the ashiq jinn can often latch on to the malignant psychopath as well, and it can affect their spouse and their children too. But their qareen, their waswas, is what drives them crazy. That's why a lot of them talk to themselves all the time. They're very irritable all the time. They're always angry all the time because their qareen is constantly talking to them and making them switch between moods. Okay? So that's a huge indicator that someone has a huge waswas problem, and they could potentially be very dangerous if they obey that voice in their head. Now, the third reason for people to become malignant psychopaths who use physical violence as a weapon that leads to murder are those who are so angry because they got cheated on, especially if this happened repeatedly since the teenage phase. So this extreme anger can lead to a very red pill mindset where they become extremely misogynistic. And then what happens after that is they go on a rampage where they become serial rapists and serial killers. Okay, and they always target women. They hate women now, and they want to get rid of as many women as possible. So they love bomb women, they reel them in, the creepy psychopaths, they reel them in, they're really nice, and then they go and murder their victims. And you find people who do this on dating apps. That's why you've got to be really, really careful on dating apps. People will match with you, and then, you can go out with them somewhere, they'll drive you somewhere, you go to their house. If you're, if you really have lost your marbles, you go to someone's house, a complete stranger, and you don't come out alive. How many people has that happened to? Many. Why? Because they are extreme misogynists who have a thrill and a need to rape and kill women because of something that happened to them in their past that they blamed a woman for. It could be their mother. It could be an ex-girlfriend. It could be an ex-wife. Repeated rejections as well can cause this. If a man is a bit creepy, from the teenage phase, and women don't like him, and he keeps getting rejected by women, that can also cause him to become extremely misogynistic. And he'll go on a rampage. He'll just kill women because he hates them. He hates them because of how they've made him feel. The same thing can happen to women the other way around. Okay? So you've got to be really careful. Some men cannot take it at all when they are cheated on, even if they are doing it themselves. It doesn't matter to them. If you cheat on them, They will swear an oath to kill you. They will end your life. And then they get used to that high that they get from, getting away with a crime, and they start to do it to multiple women. There are so many documentaries about people like this, who got cheated on, or who got rejected so many times, and then they just hate women and go on a rampage. And some men do it, and some women do it if they were bullied as well. So if they got bullied so much from their childhood or from their teenage phase or in both phases, then they will always target people who resemble their bullies. Anyone who's mean, anyone who's nasty, they'll kill them. They'll just find ways of getting rid of them. And that's how they become serial killers, serial rapists, serial misogynists who just target women. And women are not safe around these kinds of men, and they lurk on dating apps. So many of these people lurk in these places because they want easy access to women. Easy victims they can manipulate and control. Let me reel her into my house. Let me reel her into my car, and then, I've got her in my clutches. Another woman I can get rid of. To satisfy my inner anger. To satisfy my inner hunger for revenge. And know that it's not just any woman who they target. They target women they can't have. Okay, so they have to pretend to be someone they're not online to be able to catch the attention of these kinds of women. And then they get catfished when they eventually meet these men who are not who they said they were, but it's too late by then. So they will target women out of their league, women who rejected them, or the types of women who rejected them. Okay, sometimes they target people they know. And these women could be exes who rejected them or cheated on them, or even managed to escape them. So some women may have managed to divorce, someone like this and get away and remarry, and they'll still come after them even after they've remarried. There are psychopaths like this. So you've got to be really careful. You have to leave a relationship way before someone gets to the malignant stage, because this is what their mindset is like. Not all of them, but the most dangerous ones. And you will know who the dangerous ones are in your families. And you'll also get some people, men and women, who murder out of feeling so jealous. They are so intensely jealous of their spouse that, they have to end their life because of it. So, for example, let's say a man has a very beautiful wife and men look at her in the street. To put an end to it, he murders her. Sometimes she's famous online. Let's say she's an influencer and he can't stand it. He can't stand her level of fame. He'll end her life. How many times have we seen that lately, where influencers get murdered by their husbands or their fiancés or their boyfriends? It happens. Sometimes someone gets attention at work and a woman can't stand it and she'll murder her husband so that no one else can admire him, no one else can look at him. So this jealousy to this level can cause people to murder their spouses. Especially when you want to leave a malignant psychopath and they feel such intense jealousy that you could potentially marry someone else after and that someone else could have you. Yeah, it's dangerous. They could come after you. And that's why I tell you again and again and again, these are not things to take lightly. I'm telling you things that imams won't tell you, that preachers won't tell you. Being advised to go back to a home where a spouse is extremely obsessive and jealous like this is dangerous. Okay, because it leads to a very dark path. They need to get help for this. This is something that you cannot risk going back to. You may think that this obsession and this level of jealousy is love, right? You see it as, oh, he must really love me, she must really love me, but no. It's a sinister type of jealousy that will, eventually get you into so much harm and could end your life. If you're not careful, if you're not looking out for the signs, if you're not aware of the signs, then, you're putting yourself at great risk by going back to people who are like this. Look at all the stories of women who have been murdered, and they could have avoided so much had they left earlier when the signs were there. And I will go through, inshallah, some signs for you to look out for so that you can save yourselves from these people. I just want you to know that there are some people who use murder to put an end to their trauma, while others use murder to put an end to their satanic missions. Both serve the same satanic purpose, but the intentions are different. Okay? And narcissists will abuse you with their narcissistic traits, but they're more bearable to deal with than psychopaths due to them being distracted with other supplies. Okay? So, like I said before, the psychopath will hone in and obsess over one victim, whereas the narcissist has multiple sources of supply, so they don't really have time to be plotting and planning all of these, sinister murders and everything. Because all they want is so much supply. They want to enjoy this dunya. They want so many people they can benefit from. They want to take advantage of people. That's their focus. That's why they have multiple victims. Whereas the psychopath just has the one, so they are more likely to plot and plan in sinister ways like this to get rid of you if their investment and their time and their resources and their energy all goes to waste. Right? They're going to have to just get rid of you, because it's just too heavy for them to deal with. It's too heavy for them to carry. So before they go to their next victim, they have to get rid of the first one. That's when they reach the most dangerous level. I'm not saying all malignant psychopaths are like this. This is the worst of the worst. Okay, the ones who can kill in cold blood. Narcissists don't really have the guts to do that, even the malignant ones. And they will be nice to you when they get what they want, right? Whereas the psychopath is owed. Because he is God, she is God in your life, they like to play that role, they feel owed everything. You must worship them. And everything that you do for them, they simply feel entitled to. Whereas the narcissist will be happy when you give them supply. And they'll be nice for a little bit before they fall back into the same abusive cycle. That's the difference. The psychopath is very hard to please because they want to be worshipped and they have this illusion of themselves that they, astaghfirullah, are God. It's just how their minds work. And that's the level of arrogance and delusion they have that comes from their qareen. They just obey their qareen who tells them this about themselves, they accept it and then they act upon it. Now, aside from this malignant psychopath who directly murders their victim, there is another type of malignant psychopath who does it indirectly to destroy good people. And this is the type of malignant psychopath who targets people who have faith, people who are empaths, people who are far better than they are in regards to character and morality, and also people who are difficult to destroy because of the faith they have. Okay, so they are very envious of these types of people and they need to destroy them. And these particular psychopaths have very special missions from Iblis to destroy them and get rid of empaths from the world. Okay, so this could be a psychopathic parent making their empath child's life a living nightmare. It could be a husband, it could be a wife, it could be your employer, it could be a friend. If this person is driving you insane, if they're pushing you to have so many issues with your nervous system that's causing you to have health problems, their intention is to drive you eventually to a disease that will kill you or to suicide. Okay, that's their end goal. They will abuse you so much in so many different ways until your stress levels get so high and drives you to having a terminal illness, having cancer, or you just end your life because life is so unbearable with them. How many people have done that? So many good people have ended their lives because they cannot escape a malignant psychopath. The psychopath has got so far deep into their psyche where they have been brainwashed into believing that they deserve this treatment. That, this is from Allah, or this is from Islam, or this is from, their own doing. They blame themselves. They believe that they're the abusers. They believe they're the narcissists and the psychopaths because that is the work of the malignant psychopath. They get into your brain like Iblis does. And they distort your whole view of yourself and the world and Islam and Allah and everything until you end your life because you just don't see any hope. You don't see a point in living anymore. Life is so unbearable with this person who is making it a living hell every single day. You just decide to end your life. While other poor people die from stress. They die from an illness caused by this malignant psychopath who made their life a living nightmare for the last 20, 25 years. I know so many people who told me that their mothers died from stress. Their mothers died from tolerating so much abuse at the hands of their fathers. They know the reason why their mothers died, or even their fathers, was because of their parent who was a psychopath. And they never forgive them for it. They hate that parent for it. But this is what they do, and this is what the cowards do. They will push you to experience so much stress that gives you autoimmune diseases that, as a result, gives you terminal illnesses and cancers and things, so that they can say, well, it wasn't me. It happened. Khalas, that was qadar Allah. It was the will of Allah for my spouse or my child to die from an illness, but they do not acknowledge that it came from them. They will never admit that, ever. They run away from that. They run away from being held accountable for that. So they don't like to be the victim. Like I said, they're not like narcissists. They don't like to play the victim, but they like to wash their hands from responsibility. And now they have the space to pursue someone else. They pursue another victim. They get married very quickly. These malignant psychopaths get married multiple times because they need victims. Their qareen is on their case. They're always, I told you, busy with their waswas. Busy. And their qareen, who is their master, is not letting them have a break. They're like, there's no holidays for you, honey. Come on, next project, next person. What are you waiting for? Go and find that woman at work. Go and find that man, in the masjid. Attack them, target them. And then you'll find them very quickly moving on, getting married, befriending new people, and they're already starting to groom their new victims. Okay, khalas, because that mission is ended. Mission complete with success, 100% success. You took an empath out of this world, well done. They get an ego boost from that. They feel more powerful. This is delusion from the shaitan. And deep down they know it's wrong, and that's why they get triggered by good people who have morals. But ultimately they obey their qareen, they obey their shaitan. So they show you that they have no remorse because their loyalty lies with him. And they believe it's deserved. They believe it was needed. I remember once hearing a malignant psychopath who was jailed say in an interview that he did his victim a favor because she stayed with him for such a long time and tolerated abuse for years and years and years until he eventually murdered her. And when they asked him, why did you murder her? He said, I did her a favor. She had no self-respect. She had no value to her life, no value for herself. So I just did her a favor and let her leave this world. Because she tolerated so much abuse from me, so she clearly hated herself. So why would she need to stay here? Why are you looking at me like the villain? I did a good deed. I did something good for her and put her out her misery. That's what they tell themselves. That's the level of delusion they have. And they believe it. Deep down they know it's wrong. But this is what they say to people. And it's just because they've taken instructions from their qareen to say things like this, so that they do not victimize themselves. I'll say it again. The malignant psychopath does not like to be seen as the victim. He's either, or she's either the one in power who dominates everything and everyone, or they are the hero in the story. Never the villain, never the victim. Okay? Now, there are different types of psychopaths when it comes to their social levels. And some people have asked me, are the rich psychos worse than the poor psychos? Can you say a bit about that? So I'll just run through them and I'll tell you which ones are the worst among the malignant psychopaths. So you have the poor psychopaths who are dangerous because they already have insecurities and inferiority complexes. So when they feel like they have nothing to lose, there's no status, there's no wealth, there's no assets, nothing, they just kind of, go all guns blazing. They have many accumulated issues that already makes them angry. So for them to be malignant and psychopathic on top of everything that they already suffer from, it's a recipe for disaster. Okay, the poor psychopaths are a lot worse than the rich psychopaths for that reason. Because they already hate everyone as a result of their disadvantaged position in society. Okay, they feel like they have less than everyone's better than them. So they end up targeting most people in their fury. Now, the rich psychopaths have a lot of power and they financially control those under their care. Okay, and that's why so many people struggle to escape them, because they are fully dependent on them and they make sure everyone is fully dependent on them for that reason. So they won't allow their wives to work, they don't allow their children to work until, even until their early 20s. Young men should be working by then, but they want their children to be completely financially dependent on them so they can have financial control. That's the downside to psychopaths being very wealthy. They abuse that wealth in many ways. And because they hold all the finances, they're able to control everyone's lives. And then you have the psychos who have high status in society, right? These are the people who think they are God and will accept acts of shirk like prostration. Remember what I said to you before? They will ask their family members to treat them like they are to be worshipped. And some of them are so arrogant, they will request acts of shirk. And they want to be treated like prophets in society and, be constantly praised for who they are and what they do. This type of psychopath will use every single connection they have as leverage over you. So, for example, if you want to run to the local imam to complain about him, or you want to go to the local authorities, he's already got connections there because of his high status in society. All right, so even if you go, he's already, put his precautions in place. He's already told them what they need to hear so that they see him as the one who is being wronged in the situation. When you go to complain, they're like, no, he's such a nice guy. He's a great guy. He does them lots of favors. He'll do the police favors, the imam favors. He'll do the local sheikh favors. Especially if they're people like lawyers. If they're lawyers, barristers, they will do free legal favors for these people because they know one day you're going to run to them. They know one day you're going to run to the courts and they'll say, oh, this guy's a good guy. He's done a lot for us. We benefit a lot from this man. Lady, go home. Stop complaining and fear Allah. He's a good man. You need to respect your husband. You need to be a better wife. Blah, blah, blah. They don't want to lose a great connection because of a woman. So they side with him. And then they try to brainwash you into staying with him and going back home and reconciling and all that kind of stuff. So mediation takes forever because he's already got them on their side. This is work they do way before you even think about it. They plan this for years before you even decide to run to an imam. They already have all that in place. They're not stupid, I told you. These malignant psychopaths, they are not stupid people. And of course, the religious psychos are the worst, because they kill the faith in people and drive them away from Islam and away from Allah. The religious psychopath is the one who uses Islam in the worst way and, to inflict abuse, and then they kill everyone's faith. They drive their children out of Islam. Most of them will become atheists. Their ex-wife becomes atheist. Everyone around them resents Islam because of them, because of how tyrannical they see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. The malignant psychopath will give you the worst perception of Allah there is. So they will teach you about Islam in a very dark way that puts everyone off. There's no light, there's no enjoyment, there's no spirituality. It's all about Allah's wrath, Allah's anger, no mercy, all about hell, all about the punishments. They tell you how much Allah is not pleased with you. They tell you how you are hellbound. They tell you how you are cursed because you don't listen to them and all of that. And then you resent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eventually because they keep using the God card to make you obey them when they are so incredibly abusive. And then you just decide to not be a Muslim anymore because you don't like this God who has allowed psychopaths to do this to people. Of course, this isn't true, but this is what you're being taught. So you think of Allah in a tyrannical way, in a way that makes you far from Him instead of close to Him. And of course, this only applies to you. Sharia only applies to the victims. Sharia doesn't apply to them. They do whatever they want. And that's why I told you, they're not religious people. Their religion only goes so far. Even when they read Qur'an, it doesn't sink into their hearts. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, he said there will be people, when they recite Qur'an, it only goes to their throat. It doesn't go beyond, into their chests, into their hearts, because they're not sincere. Sharia applies to everyone but not them. Islamic law doesn't apply to them, because they are above the law. Remember, they are God. They are to be worshipped. And that's why it's unbearable living with them, especially when they play the role of being religious. It's cringe, it's horrific, it's disgusting, it's repulsive, because you can see the hypocrisy. You can see how they, give themselves exemptions and excuses. But no, you can never have an excuse. You could never get away with anything or do what they do, because they hold the power and you have to submit because you're scared of them or for whatever reason. Okay? Now, the religious psychopath is the worst. Absolutely. But even worse than this, within the same religious category, is the magician. No one is worse than the magician, as-sahir, the one who uses evil jinn to do his dirty work. Okay? And the reason why this person is the worst is because, number one, they deal directly with shayateen al-jinn. They communicate with them when this is strictly forbidden. And two, they directly obey Iblis. Okay, so when people get into magic, when they become magicians, they have to sacrifice to Iblis and do so many things for Iblis that involve shirk and lots of crimes. Okay, these crimes could be worshipping graves, sacrificing animals to Iblis instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pedophilia, okay, child trafficking, raping women. All of these kinds of crimes are done for Iblis. Okay, that's what you do in return for the services of the jinn. You have to do things in order to obtain the powers of the jinn when they get sent to other people to do what you want them to do. So for example, if you want to kill people through sihr, well, there's a high price to pay for that, for the sihr. They ask for a lot. They ask for a high payment. And this payment is in shirk and disgusting things. Okay, and the worst people who do this are those who appear as sheikhs or ruqya practitioners. Go to podcast 98 for a detailed explanation of this. Okay, I'm not going to go through it here. I've talked about it loads in there. There are lots of ruqya practitioners who take advantage of children and women in the sessions because they have to do things for Iblis. Okay, they're no longer worshipping Allah at that point. They say they're doing ruqya, but they're magicians. And there are lots of, radical Sufi sheikhs as well who say they're so enlightened and they're so spiritual, they're spiritual healers and so on, but they are magicians. They do all sorts of things that people can't explain. People believe that they're healing them, their illnesses are going away and things like that. But it's the work of the jinn. They are working overtime to fulfill the needs of these malignant psychopaths who are causing so much harm to not only their families but the people around them. And know that these people know that there's something wrong with them. Okay, the malignant psychopath knows that he or she is very disturbed, unlike the traumatized psychopath who normalizes their behavior. So the traumatized psychopath believes that, they're doing things for the greater good, everything they do is perfectly fine. But the malignant psychopath knows there's something not right with them. And this is why they always turn to the people or animals who are their soft spots, because when they do nice things for them, it makes them feel like normal and good people. In many cases, since they were very young, they've often copied the emotions of other people to feel what they can't feel. So for example, if they see someone crying, and they cannot empathize in that moment. They cannot understand how to cry in that moment. So let's say, a family member dies and they're at a funeral and they see other people crying, but they can't cry because they've never understood how to express emotions properly, they will go home and they will try to act it until they perfect it. The same with laughing, the same with other emotions. They just copy the emotions of other people because it's the best they can do when they are unable to express them themselves. So they grow up, being quite creepy in that way because their emotions aren't real. Even when you see them crying, it's fake. They're faking it. When you see them laughing sometimes, it's fake. They fake a lot of their emotions because they need to appear normal in society, but they really struggle with them, especially grief and sadness. And when they do eventually express these emotions, they're usually aggressive, and this aggressiveness can turn dangerous, because they are finally releasing emotions that have been suppressed for a very long time, and they lash out at everyone, and everyone suffers. So since a very young age, they have been struggling with their emotions, and that's why they're very angry people, and they are violent when they snap. It's one of their core traits. And I'm going to go on to a list of some of their traits that you may be aware of. And if you're not, then please take heed of these, because if you're living with a malignant psychopath, then you're going to want to be aware of them so that you can protect yourselves. So, malignant psychopaths do not form genuine emotional attachments with anyone aside from their trusted people and animals who have access to their soft spot. So don't think that you are going to be one of those people. These people and creatures tend to be from their past. And unlike the traumatized psychopaths, they do not do things out of love. They do things because they believe people deserve them. They do things because they want to punish people. They do things for power, dominance, pleasure, and stimulation. And they will also do horrible things to people who they hate. So they will punish and kill people simply because they don't like them. They hate them. Could be their victims too. If they are so sick of their own victims, they will punish and kill them eventually. And this is what makes them very dangerous. Because if they don't like you, they will put you on their radar and you will be a target. Another thing is that they always view people as objects, not partners. And that's why many people suffer with them in marriage, because, you can never really form an emotional attachment with somebody who you sleep next to every day. And that's why intimacy is so awful for many empathic people who are married to them, because of how they view their partners as objects. They prefer to indulge in pornography and treat their husbands and wives as sex slaves, asking them to do haram things, immoral things, to satisfy them, because they can't bond with them. And many of them have very strange sexual desires as well. Lots of women claim to be treated like prostitutes by these men, by these husbands, and they hate intimacy. And if they do not oblige, then they see their wrath, because they're meant to be slaves. Parents are the same with their children. Their children are slaves to them. And they often have children for the purpose of them serving them when they're older. They have children so that those children can be slaves in the future. And that's how they treat everyone who they believe is beneath them. They're very organized and methodical in their behavior. They plan things very, very well to the T, right? They love their spreadsheets. They love their lists and, secret folders and secret files. They've got folders within folders within folders because they plan things very well. And, they will conceal everything as well. Everything's got locks on them. Everything's got a password on it. And they want access to everything you do and everything you have, but you can't have access to what they do and what they have. So they always know where you are. They always want to know where you are. They track you. They put trackers in your car, trackers in your phone, trackers in the house, secret cameras in the house, secret microphones in the house. They're always paranoid that you're going to do a number on them, especially if, you've hinted it before or you've done something before where you've tried to leave. You best believe they're going to track every move after that. And they also have a very good skill at hacking into everything you have, right? Your phone, your email, your social media. Even if you create a new account, a secret account, they will find it and hack into it because they always have to know what's going on. They always need to know what you're thinking, what you're doing, where you're going, but you don't know what they're doing. And because they have that, presence in the house, which is very overpowering, very intimidating, you don't really question them. You know that they're up to no good. You know that they're hiding things, but you can never get to the bottom of it because they are so good at concealing everything. They are so good at hiding all their malicious stuff, that they watch or what they do or what they plan. So, know that they will do things like that. And they'll take away your car keys, they'll take away your phone, they'll take away your laptop, they'll take away your access to Wi-Fi if they have to punish you and to also monitor you. They will even create fake accounts on social media to monitor your accounts. They want to see your activity, they want to see what you're posting. They will do really creepy stuff like that. They are creepy Joes. They will do fake accounts. They might even speak to you from a fake account like they're a stranger, just to see where your mindset is at, just to see if you cheat on them, just to see if, you tell your secrets or your marital secrets to anyone. They'll pretend to be a friend who's added you and, someone who wants to get to know you, and they will trap you that way. They set you up, and then they use that against you later in court. They use it in so many different ways. And if you find out things about them, they'll punish you for it and then intimidate you to never bring it up again. They will scare you to never bring it up again. They might even beat you and punish you for catching them cheating, for catching them do anything that is immoral, or, it could be fraud, it could be, them scamming somebody. Whatever it is that you catch them doing, they could be caught molesting a child or sexually abusing someone in the home. They'll be caught doing things like this. And when you catch them out, they will punish you. And if you ever bring it up, they will punish you. They will threaten you with all sorts of horrible things if you were to ever bring it up again. And that's why so many of them get away with it. That's why so many people go unreported. Family members see crimes, but they can't report them because they're so scared of these people. They're scared to be killed. They're scared of, something horrible happening to them because of a secret that's been revealed. They don't want to take that risk when it comes to exposing a malignant psychopath. It can be really dangerous. And that's why so many of them roam our societies, because people are too scared to report them. And I can understand that. I sympathise with it, especially when they've seen firsthand what their wrath is like. And this is why we need, more awareness about these kinds of people, especially because they love to isolate their victims as well. So you've got to be wary about that. The malignant psychopath and the traumatized psychopath as well, they will prefer to marry people from abroad, because when they bring them over to their country, they're isolated, right? They have no support network. They've got no friends or family in that person's country or city or state. They love people to be isolated so that they can be as abusive as they want without anyone noticing. And they're also intensely jealous, like I said before. So if they cannot isolate you from the beginning, like bring you to another country, then they will move to another country with you later, so that you can be as far away from others as possible, because they are jealous of everyone who has access to you. So if you're married to someone very abusive, especially if they're physically abusive, and then all of a sudden they want to go to a Muslim country to live in because it will be better for the children, you're in danger, okay? Especially if that abuse has not been reported, especially if no one knows about the abuse or no one believes you about the abuse. They will use the excuse that they want to make hijrah so that they can take you away from everyone who you've started to complain to, okay? These people are very intelligent and they're aware of everything they do. They understand the consequences of all their actions, but it doesn't stop them getting what they want. Okay, so if moving to another country is going to get them what they want from you, that's what they're going to do. They will uproot their lives and make it look like a sacrifice for the sake of Islam, for the sake of the deen, right? For the sake of the kids. And it makes them look good. But actually they have an agenda in place. And these decisions are often very hasty. Okay, so these people act on impulse when they see a great opportunity to control you more and isolate you from everything and everyone. You may have started a career they don't like. They want to stop you from that. They move you to another country or to another city. You may have started your studies. Okay, you may have gone back to university and they don't like it. And they want to sabotage that as well. So they act on impulse when they find an opportunity to get you away from things you enjoy, things that give you purpose, people who are a support for you. They don't like any of that. They don't want you to have any confidence or independence because they want you to always depend on them. And when you always depend on them, it means that they're in power. They have full control over you, your finances, your life, your personal life, everything. Many of them don't even want you to see your families as much as you do. They want to take you away from that because they are envious of the close relationship you have with them. They want you so badly to move to another country or another state or another city so that you don't have that closeness with your family anymore. They don't like it. I'm telling you, they will even control the time you eat, the time you sleep, the time you breathe. They love to have control over everything. They will tell you when you can sleep. They will tell you when you can pray, when you can, do anything. Even if you want to go to the park, they may not allow you to do that. They're very strict with things like this. And if you go, you'll face that wrath. If you go to the park with the kids without them because you just need some space, you'll face the wrath. You can't go to a cafe by yourself. You can't do anything by yourself because they have to know at all times what you're doing. They have to have that control. And if they're not with you, they will constantly be in contact with you. They'll be calling you non-stop, texting you non-stop, tracking you non-stop, because they need to know what you're doing at all times. And if you rebel, they will punish you. And they can do this in a number of ways. It could be physical, it could be verbal, it could be taking things away, it could be stopping your allowance. They may not give you money for anything. Maybe you need money for a trip or your studies, and then they cut that financing agreement. All of a sudden you find yourself with no money. You find yourself being unable to do something because you don't have the finances for it. It's just an example. They could lock you in the house. They may lock you in and take the key so that you do not leave the house. They do things like this. They are crazy like this. Sometimes they'll lock you in a room. Forget the house. They'll lock you in a room. There are lots of people who tell me that this happens to them. Their parents do this to them when they've disobeyed them, or, when they've had an argument or answered back. The father will lock his daughter or his son in his bedroom or her bedroom for the whole day. And that's that. Some husbands do this to their wives as well, to stop them from going out, teach them a lesson. They'll teach you lessons in all sorts of ways. And they will usually do them in ways that will affect you. So they know what you hate and they'll do exactly that. So the most common way they punish their victims is to hit them. They hit them, beat them with various objects. They become so intimidating and they can cause such physical harm that it can leave you terrified of them. And that's why most people don't speak about it. They don't report it. They don't complain about it to anyone, because it is so terrifying to go through, and they fear for their lives, especially when you see them smashing things in the house and you know that the physical abuse is coming. I have clients who tell me that they get beaten up when they're pregnant. They get their stomachs punched, their heads punched. They get their heads banged against a wall by these people. Their arms get twisted, they get pushed, they get shoved, and they get, hit with all sorts of things. They get keys chucked at them, chairs chucked at them. And I'm talking about men and women here too, because lots of women are malignant. If your wife or your mother is physically abusive, she is a malignant narcissist or psychopath. Okay, because even narcissists do this, but narcissists don't take it to the point of murder like psychopaths can. Psychopaths have less empathy than narcissists, and that's why they are able to take it to that dangerous level. But all malignant narcissists and psychopaths will physically abuse you. They'll spit on you, they'll kick you, they'll punch you in all areas of your body. They don't care. And they lose their minds in that moment from rage. And then you get to, the point where you need a hospital, right? You need an ambulance. And they will force you to make an excuse for them. They'll say you fell down the stairs. They'll say, a cyclist hit you. They will create an excuse to get away with it. And because the victim is so terrified of them, they cover up for them. And even when they complain to their families about it, many malignant mothers will say, this is normal. You wanted to get married. You chose him. Deal with it. Live with it. And they get sent back to their toxic environments, their toxic marriages, and they have no choice but to endure all this horrific abuse. And, I have clients who have broken teeth, broken ribs, broken bones from dealing with these people. And they're unable to escape because no one will support them. It's horrible. And, another thing I want to highlight here is marital rape. Okay, this is when marital rape happens. So, malignant psychopaths are already strange when it comes to their sexual desires. They enjoy haram acts, they enjoy strange acts because they see these things from pornography. But when they're angry, they will punish you with rape. They will violently rape their wives as a punishment. They want to teach them a lesson for answering back, or for not doing as they were told. And women endure this. Lots of women are putting up with this. And they're suffering because they cannot do anything about it. There's no one there to stand up for them or hold these abusers accountable. And they say that they're taking their rights in the name of Islam. That it's okay for them to violently take their sexual rights because she's refusing. And she's refusing because she hates him. She's refusing because she's just taken a beating. And he's saying, no, I don't care. It doesn't matter if you're upset. It doesn't matter if I've just hit you. It doesn't matter if I've abused you. I will take my sexual rights from you as a husband. And he will force her into a very painful experience because he's forcing his way into her. There's no foreplay. There's nothing. And she could be damaged down there. She could be tearing because of it. It's awful. Rape is a crime in Islam. I don't care what people say about this. If you are forcing your wife to have sexual intimacy with you, it is a crime. And it is a crime you'll get punished for in a Sharia court. However, and unfortunately, many men say that there's no such thing as rape in marriage. Rubbish. This is rape. And it's also oppression. And every man who does this to his wife will pay the price of oppression. Okay, this is a grave sin. It's a major sin. They will pay for it in this life and the next, inshallah. There were some men who used to do this to their wives at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he used to be so repulsed and so disgusted by this behavior, and he ordered these men to stop it immediately. He asked them, what kind of creatures are you to be behaving this way? He was angry with them. In a hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Zam'a radiallahu anhu, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يجلد أحدكم امرأته جلد العبد ثم يجامعها في آخر اليوم. He said, it is forbidden for you to flog your wives like you flog a slave, and then expect to have sexual intercourse with them or have sexual intercourse with them later in the day. So remember back then, before Islamic laws came, the Arab pagans used to flog their slaves really badly. They used to punish them, abuse them, they used to do all sorts of things to them. And there were men who were still doing that, even among the Muslims. And the Prophet ﷺ held them accountable for it. He said, what do you think you're doing? What kind of beasts are you? You cannot be doing this. You cannot be treating women like this, because it was still, ingrained in their minds and their programming to treat women like this. They were so misogynistic. They were still learning about how to treat women properly and how to treat them kindly. And, the Prophet ﷺ was still, telling people off for treating women this way, even after they had become Muslims. So if you are unfortunately going through this is a crime you have to report. This isn't something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet ﷺ accepts for us at all. This is forbidden. And these monsters have the audacity to say that if you do not oblige, if you do not accept, then you're the one who's going to be punished. And that you're the one who's going to be cursed all night by the angels for not accepting this is their right. They are really vulgar people. What level of audacity is this? I wonder where they get the audacity from. I ask myself, I'd love to know where you guys get the audacity to even dare say something like this. You are oppressing someone who you are responsible for, and yet you can say that they are the ones who are going to get cursed all night by the angels. SubhanAllah, make it make sense. But they won't make it make sense because their goal is to manipulate you into believing that it's acceptable and that this is from Islam, so that you hate Islam. Okay, you hate the Prophet ﷺ and you hate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's their goal, to make you believe that this is their right and they can take it by force, they can take it with pain. They can take it in such a vile and vulgar manner to discipline you, okay, to punish you, and to take it by force when you don't feel like it because it's their right to take. They manipulate you into believing that this is acceptable. So you stay quiet about it, you don't complain about it, you don't report it. You've got to be really careful with things like this because it can really drive you out of Islam. Marital rape has driven so many women out of Islam. It is not acceptable. They use this to punish you. And they use this to make you hate Islam, especially when they see you as people of faith anyway. If they know that you have faith, this is how they destroy it. And then also later, they have the nerve to say that they want a second wife because their wife is frigid. She doesn't like sex. She doesn't enjoy intimacy. She's disobedient and doesn't give his rights. So the next poor victim is being fed this story about the first wife because he's justifying why he wants a second wife. And then the second wife finds herself in the same position later down the line. They may even take, your phone away. Like I said before, they'll take your phone away, your car away, your laptop away. You might have deadlines. You might be studying or you're at work, working from home, and they'll take your laptop and you've got meetings to attend online. They don't care. They'll take it as a punishment. They will drive you absolutely insane. They will make you go through 50 levels of crazy, I'm telling you. Because they will do these things to punish you when you do not obey master's orders. Right? If you're not obeying master's orders to the T, prepare to have things taken away. Prepare to have your job in jeopardy because of not being able to attend meetings or not submitting things on time because they've taken your laptop. How are you going to report that? And if you do report it, you're going to face more wrath. It's an absolute freaking nightmare living with these people. It is hell on earth living with a malignant psychopath. And don't get me started on the intimidation that they put you through and the unpredictable anger outbursts and rage tantrums, or they'll do that out the blue. Just to scare you, just to remind you who's boss, just to remind you who to fear. They want you to fear them more than you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They want to be the person in your life who you look up to the most and also fear the most. Because I'll say it 100 times more if I have to. They want to play God in your life. Okay? And this unpredictable anger can come out in the most inappropriate times. Like, for example, when they're driving. Oh, they're known to be crazy drivers. They will scare you with their crazy driving. All of a sudden, they will, do 150, 160 down the motorway. Very dangerous driving. They'll emergency stop in random places. They'll throw you forward. They will, they'll just do all those kinds of things. It's something that they do to intimidate you. They will throw you into swimming pools, just chuck you in. They will pretend to want to push you off a cliff, like during a holiday. And they say it as a joke, but they actually mean it because these people have many fantasies of harming others. It's really worrying when they say things like that to you because they actually want to do it, but they still haven't built up the courage to do so. Okay, so if they joke about, for example, if you don't behave, I'm going to push you off the cliff. I'm going to push you into the sea. and they know that you have a big phobia of the ocean, they will say things like that because they're thinking about it. If you're with someone who keeps saying things like this and you're still there, you're kind of risking it here at this point. And I'm just praying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects you. These people, I'm telling you, have many fantasies of harming others and dominating other people, even if it's not in an angry way. I mean, you might find them in their office, swinging around in their chair, just fantasizing about the control they can have if they do this and if they do that. They enjoy it. They revel in, daytime fantasies and daydreaming of things like that. They just love their free time because they get to revel in those kinds of thoughts. So, take these things seriously. And at the same time, you'll find them always irritated from their intense waswas. They can be scared of themselves too. Okay, so sometimes their waswas is so intense, they're scared of themselves. They're scared of this entity who keeps whispering to them. And that's why you find them to be very paranoid. Sometimes, you can notice in their behavior that they're very nervous. They can be very nervous, especially around people. And when they're scared of themselves, they take themselves out. They go to another room. They will go for a drive. They'll leave the house because there does come a point when they are so angry, when they are experiencing rage and they're scared of themselves. And they can take themselves out in that moment if it's very overwhelming for them. And because of this, many of them often have nightmares as well. So they're tormented at night. They're tormented by their qareen if they haven't managed to complete a mission yet. They are tormented by the things that they've done in their past. And you may not know any of it. You may not know half of it. But the nightmares they have at night are of all the horrible things they've done before. And, they can rarely sleep. They always have sleeping issues. And you will also find that houses that have malignant psychopaths living in them will also have jinn issues. You'll have spiritual issues in the house because evil jinns love environments where there's a lot of fear experienced. Okay, so if there are psychopaths living in the house and they're inflicting a lot of fear on the victims, you'll find lots of jinn coming to the house. You'll find odd things happening in the house. You'll find things moving about. You might hear odd sounds. There will be things that you could see or hear when you have someone like that in the house. Okay? Many people have reported jinn problems because of the abuse that's been inflicted on them by these people. They attract the evil jinn. The evil jinn follow these people around everywhere. Okay, so always play Surah Al-Baqarah at home, and they hate it. The malignant psychopaths will absolutely hate Surah Al-Baqarah. So try and do it when they're not at home. Because when you do it at home, when they are there, they will go into a rage. Okay, so play it when they're not there. And just for you to note, they will take advantage of your fear of the jinn, okay, to scare you into believing that you are the one who is possessed by jinn, okay? Or they will, play on the fact that you can't sleep because you believe that there's a jinn. They will literally use that as an excuse for everything. So whenever you see something, they'll say, it's the jinn, it's come to haunt you. The jinn has come to punish you. The jinn has come to attack you because you haven't listened to your father. You haven't listened to your mother. If you can see the jinn, that means you're an evil person. Only evil people can see the jinn. They'll say things like that to you to make you self-doubt. They'll also make you believe that you're the one who has the possession and you're the one who's going to be obsessively going to ruqya or doing ruqya on yourself when you're the one who hasn't got the issue. They know they have the issue. They know they have spiritual problems, but they will never admit it, or they will blame the jinn or iblis for everything that they've done to other people. Okay, they'll say, the enemy's pulled me away. The enemy made me do this. Allah will forgive me because it was the enemy's work. No, it was their work. They've listened to their qareen. And always remember, malignant psychopaths aren't possessed by the jinn because they are already shayateen al-ins. Okay, the jinn don't need to possess them. They are already shayateen al-ins. So be careful of that, because they do use that as an excuse when they see how much you fear the jinn. Don't show them that so that they don't play on it. Okay? And remember also, they will use excuses like, I did X, Y, Z for the sake of Allah. You committed a sin and I had to punish you for the sake of Allah. You disobeyed your husband, so I had to punish you for the sake of Allah, so you don't get punished in the afterlife. It's better that I, take justice into my own hands and punish you here so that you don't get punished over there. They do things like that in the name of Islam, in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? They are known for blaming Iblis and blaming the jinn when they think that you'll fall for it. Okay, when they think that, it's very easy to manipulate this person into believing that all my dirty work is, the jinn, and all my maliciousness and all my evil behavior is from the jinn. Oh yeah, khalas, I'll just blame the jinn for it then. Yeah, cool. Believe it's the jinn. And then their victims obsessively try to book them into ruqya, and they try to do this and they try to do that. Ruqya doesn't work on these people, by the way, because they're not doing the inner work. It doesn't matter how many times you take a malignant psychopath for ruqya or how many times you read upon them, nothing changes. And it's not because the ruqya isn't working. It's not because the Qur'an isn't powerful enough. It's because inner work has to be done for the ruqya to work. If you're dragging people to ruqya sessions out of hope that they will be cleansed and purified and all of that, it's not going to work, because they either don't believe in it or they don't want to change. Or they may even like that they're possessed and have all these problems. So don't think that ruqya is going to magically solve everything for you. And don't believe them when they say that they're going through psychosis either. Psychosis tends to happen to people suddenly. So for example, they would have been really good people and then they just turn quite, evil or disturbed, or they start doing really creepy things. They start raging, shouting. They start saying strange things. When it's out of character, that tends to be psychosis and jinn possession, okay? Psychosis is jinn possession. It's not a mental health problem. It's not a fuse that's gone bust in your brain. It is jinn possession, okay? And maybe I'll speak a bit more about it later in another podcast. But it's really dangerous for people to have it. And psychosis in Islam is al-junun, which is the peak of insanity. And it causes someone to lose complete control of their mind. Okay, that's an insane person. When you can no longer think for yourself, you have no control over your actions and what you're saying. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pardons people who are experiencing junoon because their actions are a result of the jinn that has taken full control over them. Okay? So, sometimes the waswas is so intense that it can cause someone with psychosis to commit suicide because of what the Qur'an keeps telling them. It's a very intense type of waswas that, it drives someone mad because it's so loud in their head and it's constant. That's what psychosis is. It's different from malignant psychopathy because malignant psychopathy is a process. That person became that way because of their life journey and everything they've been through and their trauma and their anger and all their built up resentment and shame and grief and all of that, okay? And their insecurities and inferiority complexes, all that accumulates until they become this kind of person. But psychosis happens suddenly to somebody and it's always out of character, okay? SubhanAllah, during that time of psychosis, the pen is lifted. So the angels stop writing the bad deeds that happen during that time because the person wasn't committing them consciously. It was all being done automatically because of the jinn control. So when the person regains their sanity, the pen starts to record all their bad and good deeds again. SubhanAllah, this is from the mercy of Allah. On the Day of Judgment, they will find empty pages in their book because during that time, they were going through psychosis and they were doing things that they were not aware of because their mind was absent. Okay, that's what happens. You don't just suddenly lose your mind. A powerful jinn takes over it for a short period of time until, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills for it to leave. And there's always a reason why people go through psychosis. There's always a very valuable lesson to learn from this, and it's usually about your adhkar and your protections. Okay? Now, other traits that malignant psychopaths have is that their eyes are usually quite dead. They're cold and they're empty. They rarely blink. And they also like to maintain very dominating eye contact. It makes you feel very uncomfortable when they look at you because 9 times out of 10 you're looking at their qareen and not them. And especially when they're angry, especially when they're frustrated and irritated, you always see their qareen come out on their face. That's why you can't look at their faces when they're in that kind of mood. It's actually quite scary to look at them when they're angry. But even during normal days when their mood is fine, it can be quite intimidating to look at them directly in the eyes. They rarely laugh and smile as well. It's a rare occurrence when they're caught laughing or smiling. And they have very rigid personalities, so they're not easygoing at all. They're very set in their ways. They're very dictator-like, very militant. They're very gruff and military in how they do things in life, always. They're always miserable. And, they're no fun, basically. They have no fun. They have no chill, like the new generation say, right? Because they're just not those kinds of people who enjoy life. They don't enjoy life. They hate life. They hate themselves. They hate everyone else. So, don't expect them to be fun parents or fun spouses or anything. They are always so miserable, always so down in the dumps. And if they are fun, it's usually to get back at you. So, for example, if you do end up having a divorce and they take the kids, you'll see their fun side come out then because they want the loyalty of the children and so on, right? They will use it to play a game, but it's not in their nature to be that way. They are always miserable people. They do not like living in this life, okay? Because they know something's wrong with them. They know that they cannot live to their full potential, and that's why they're very envious of good people. They know that good people get to enjoy this life and they can't. So they're just going to make the most of the power they have, the control they have, and so on. They're also very eerily calm during a crisis or moments of grief. Okay, I did mention that before. But this is something that's very common with them. They are unusually calm. And that's why, like I said before in my previous podcast, people like to hire them. They like to hire them in high stress positions because they just have no reaction. The building could blow up and they've just decided to take it easy. They sit in their chairs, they don't panic. They're not panickers. You'll never see them panicking. You'll never see them, faffing around and being flustered like everyone else. They will sit there with no reaction, cold as ice, and people like that. People like that they are emotionally grounded, but they're not emotionally grounded. They just don't have the empathy. They don't have those emotions to feel what other people are feeling in that moment in time. They're not panicking over anything because they don't know how to feel those emotions. So people like to be around them in moments of crisis and high stress because they can deal with it very well. And they think that people who panic, people who scream, people who cry, people who faff around and, they kind of get very emotional in situations. They think those people are really stupid. They look at them as people who are brain dead. Right? They have no respect for people who panic and scream and, start running around. They don't like that at all. They think something's wrong with them rather than them being the problem or them being the issue. A psychopath will look at you like you're crazy. They'll look at you with disgust and disrespect if, you're acting out very emotionally in a situation that they have been able to remain calm in. Okay, that's why they look down upon people. They don't like emotional people at all, especially other men. So if the psychopath is a man and he's seeing his work colleagues panic over something, minor, he will just be disgusted with them and he will treat them terribly. He will treat them like little girls after that. And that's why people hate their employers who are psychopaths, because they're very patronizing. But it's because the psychopath has lost all respect for them. They're just looked at as little girls who just get emotional over everything. Even though, ironically, they are the most emotional when it comes to them having random outbursts, right? So when they have their random episodes of rage, they are the most emotional. But in a crisis outside the home, they are able to maintain an impressive level of composure. It's just how they are. Now, As they get older, the malignant psychopath will experience hate from their children, and many of these children are driven out of Islam, okay? And many of these children can also develop disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar. They can have all of these mental health problems and physical health problems as well as a result of the stress that the malignant psychopath parent put them through, and also a spouse. If your spouse is putting you through this, then you can also develop mental health disorders and, lots and lots of health problems. And I've spoken about that before. And psychopath parents often like for you to marry people like them so that you're always controlled, because it's the same satanic mission. They just pass it on to another shaitan ins to take over the job. So when they want to get their daughter married, they have to pass it on to someone who's competent. They will dismiss all the good men and they'll accept the psychopaths, they'll accept the narcissists who are going to maintain that level of control over you. They pass that duty on to someone else. So you'll often find that that's the reason why they like sick, twisted people, but they reject and find faults in the good ones. They don't want you to marry anyone good. They want you to marry someone just like them, if not worse. And they usually only accept someone who's liberal or who hide behind a religious mask. Okay? And when you experience the abuse in marriage, you won't be able to go back to your parents to complain about anything that's going on at all. They will not support you. They will be happy that you are going through abuse. They will not allow you to come back home. They do not allow you to have a divorce. They do not allow you to escape. Okay, they always send you back to the abuser for them to finish the job. Okay, that's why malignant psychopath parents always make marital problems worse. And this is why your spouses who are malignant psychopaths love your parents. And they love them because they enable them. They give them the space to do whatever it is that they want to do to you. Okay? And you will not get discarded. You will not get divorced until the malignant psychopath truly believes that they have destroyed you. Only then will you be free from their clutches. They have to believe deep down that they have completed their mission and they've absolutely destroyed every part of you. That's when they look for new supply. That's when they look for a new victim. But until then, they will trap you in so many ways. They will not let you escape. They will only let you escape when they believe, that's it, khalas, my job is done. This person can't move on with their life. I've crippled them in every way. And that's that. That's if they don't take it to, murder and homicide and all of that. If they leave you before that, then they aren't as dangerous as the killers, but they will be satisfied enough to see your physical health decline, your mental health, your spiritual health, your deen, everything, your career, your studies. If they see all of that going down the drain, they're happy. They can happily move on after that. They really are a nasty piece of work. And lots of them will also leave you when they've destroyed all your support systems. When they've left you with nothing, no one to turn to, they've destroyed all your relationships, they've severed ties with all your friends. All of that happens for a reason. So that when they finally discard you, you are left with absolutely nothing to fall back on. Nothing and no one. They'll also leave you with no money, and they will not pay any child maintenance. So they will happily let you go, after they believe they've destroyed you, but they give you no child maintenance, nothing to help you raise the kids. They will leave the kids with you, but they want you to struggle as a single parent. Okay, they love to see that. They want you to think that your life was better with them, and they want you to struggle. That's why they don't care about their children after a divorce. They disappear. It's like they don't have children at all. It's like they don't exist. And they do this knowing that you were once dependent on them for many years. So when they leave you alone with the children, it's a punishment. In their minds, it's a punishment because they're thinking, well, let's see how she gets on, or let's see how he gets on with his life, So they leave you to it, but they leave you with all the responsibility. And you're also left with children who hate their dad or hate their mum. So it's an extra burden on you because you now have to be the mother and the father because they don't want anything to do with their malignant parent. So it's a struggle leaving someone like this, but it is freedom. It is the best thing you can do for yourself. Now, malignant psychopaths break the most when they reach old age. Okay, so you might see them, you're repeating the same cycles with other people again and again and again until they reach old age. And when they do, they age very badly and they become very ugly. Okay, so once a psychopath starts aging, they pay for their bad behavior. They don't get anything they want at that stage. Okay, they start losing their looks and their charm, and they become more impulsive, which makes it very difficult for them to attract new supplies. People start figuring out the reality of these people because of their repetitive patterns. And they will continue to keep losing good people until there's no one left to show them any mercy or empathy. Okay, so the people they will meet in old age tend to be like them. There are many hospital wards filled with malignant psychopaths and narcissists who got sick, but they have no family to come and visit them. They're all stuck with each other in hospital. They all talk to each other and they all realise that they're all in the same boat. By then they pushed everyone away because of all the abuse and the tyranny and making people feel inferior to them and less than them. So when they really need people, good people around them to look after them and show them mercy, kindness, compassion, love, care, they're nowhere to be found. And it's their own doing. Okay? And also, aging psychopaths lose their intelligence over time because they aren't able to control their emotions like before. So the older they get, the more impulsive they get with their emotions due to so much accumulation and their loss of power. So people avoid them even more because they have repeated and heated outbursts of anger because they are so frustrated. And with more health problems, the lives of these psychopaths become more isolated and miserable. So when they get these, life lessons that humble them, the illnesses that come to them, and the loss of independence, whatever it is that comes to them, it makes them more miserable. And when they're more miserable, they become even more unbearable to live with. Because imagine someone so tyrannical, having to be spoon-fed and looked after, at the end of their life, having nappies changed and, being helped to have a bath and brush their hair and brush their teeth and do their beard and all of that. It cripples them because it makes them feel so weak, as now the abuser needs the mercy of their victim. And if they dabbled in magic before, if they worked with the jinn, if they were a magician, then at this point in life they get attacked by the jinns who they didn't pay, and they are the jinns they still owe. Okay, so maybe the jinns did some work for them, but this person, because of old age, because of an illness, they weren't able to complete their side of the deal. The jinn come and attack them. That's why they get horrible nightmares. They can get physically attacked, and the waswas gets worse too. And during this stage of their life, they humble themselves enough to ask you to pray for them because they know you're good people, and to do sadaqah for them. Okay, why would they ask you to do that if they didn't believe you were good? They will tell you things like Allah won't forgive you if you don't forgive them, and that if you want Allah's mercy, you need to show mercy to them. So they know exactly who you are. They know that they can still manipulate you with the God card even when they're on their deathbeds. And some of you may be so empathic that you will help the malignant psychopath in this stage of their life, despite everything that they've done to you. And you become a lifeline for this person because in the past, they would have done something right. There would have been some goodness in them in the way they treated you and the family in general. So for example, let's say they gave you a very good life. They provided you with everything you needed. They never let you go without. And it gave you good opportunities in life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves that for them as a mercy through one of the children who is very empathic and will look after them in their old age despite everything. Even if that person holds a lot of pain towards this parent for the aggression, for the abuse, for the difficulties that they put them through, they will remember that their parent once did good for them. And this is the mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is their lifeline for them to wake up and repent and feel some guilt and remorse for what they did in the past. Because it is out of Allah's mercy that this empathic child feels sorry for this parent at this stage of life, and even when they're sick, because they know how much this experience cripples the parent after all the power they had in the past. So if a parent goes through a series of heart attacks, or they're reduced to a hospital bed and they're unable to function properly on their own, this pity, this sympathy can be a lifeline for this tyrannical person to wake up and remember what they did to the people under their care. Okay? And, at this point as well, they remember everything. That's why they're tormented. Their waswas torments them for all the missions they didn't complete, and their conscious also, that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also reminds them of everything they've done in life. They remember everything, whereas the victim gets brain fog. Subhanallah. Allah will wipe your memory to make you forget a lot of trauma so that you can move on with your life, but the psychopath remembers everything. And the hikmah behind that is to encourage them to repent. Okay, when they remember everything bad that they've done, it's so that they wake up and repent. And just a quick note here, therapies like EMDR are not good for victims because they bring up trauma that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for you to forget. There's a reason why you've forgotten a lot of past trauma. Inshallah, when I do a podcast about modern day spirituality, I will speak about these therapies that can do a lot more harm than good. It's also important to know that many psychopaths and narcissists at this stage in life will also leave Islam. They will abandon faith completely. And I see this mostly among the strict Salafis. Okay? Strict Salafi psychopaths and narcissists often resent Islam so much when they grow up, and they use it to abuse people. So towards the end of their lives, they will either abandon it completely or they will knuckle down on it more because they have a fear now of the afterlife and what's going to happen to them. So sometimes they can either become extremely religious towards the end of their life and all they do is pray, but they haven't made any amends with the people. They would just pray and read so much Qur'an and go for Umrah and this and that because they now want to be saved. Now they're panicking because they know they're about to die. So you may notice them doubling down on it more, or they completely abandon Islam. Okay? Now either way, when they do pass away, the death and the absence of a narcissist and a psychopath is a mercy for a believer. The darkness is gone now. Right? And many believers pray for the death of an abuser. And the dua of the oppressed, as you know, is always answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't owe these people any forgiveness. It's very hard to forgive them when they don't ask for forgiveness, when they don't redeem themselves, and when the feelings are still there. Right? So even if they do apologize, there's years of trauma to, hold them accountable for that they don't want to speak about. They just tell you, khalas, for the sake of Allah, just forgive me. The past is the past. The past is gone. What happened in the past, inshallah, Allah will forgive me for it. Just forgive me for everything and let us move on. I'm going to go for Umrah or I'm going for Hajj. Please forgive me before I leave. I might die and this and that. They'll try to guilt trip you into it as well. But you don't need to, especially when you feel it's not sincere. And especially when they haven't redeemed themselves. They need to redeem themselves for everything they've done. They need to make it up to you. And if they just think that a shabby apology is going to do it, then, they're going to have to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anyway. Even if you did forgive them in this life, they still have to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the oppression they caused. They're not going to get away with it. They never, ever, ever get away with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ibrahim, verse 42, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ. Do not think, O Prophet, that Allah is unaware of what the wrongdoers do. He only delays them until a day when their eyes will stare in horror. So if you look here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will delay them. He will delay their punishment and He will delay their life. And that's why lots of them live to old age. Allah delays them so that when the punishment comes, it's going to be severe. Don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgotten or He can't see the oppressors and what they're doing to everyone. He sees them. He's just delaying them for a day when the punishment comes crashing down upon their heads. It's delayed and not forgotten. Okay? So instead of focusing so much on, the punishment they're going to get in this life and why hasn't it come yet and why is their life good and why this and why that, focus on forgiving yourself for everything that happened to you, for everything that was out of your control, for the oppression that you went through. Forgive yourself for the naivety, for not knowing about narcissism and psychopathy and, being reeled into all of these trauma cycles. Forgive yourself for all of that. Forgive yourself for what you tolerated. This is more important than you forgiving the abuser. Because when you forgive yourself, you can move on with your life. You'll no longer hate yourself. You'll no longer see yourself in such a negative light. Okay, you won't keep telling yourself how stupid you are, how weak you are, how pathetic you are. All of those intrusive thoughts that the Qur'an keeps telling you, you can get rid of them by forgiving yourself. And focus on the lesson, focus on the experience, focus on what you can take from it, the good that you can take from the lesson, so that you can apply it to your life and you can have a better future, inshallah. That's more important than forgiving any abuser. Forgive yourselves first. So many people will forgive an abuser before they forgive themselves. And then they wonder why they're still so miserable, still so angry, still desiring revenge. They can't sleep at night, they can't move on with their life. It's because of this. You may be struggling for years to get over something, even though you say that you have forgiven someone for the sake of Allah. But that feeling in your heart is still there. It's because you haven't forgiven yourself for what you went through and what you tolerated and what you accepted. Okay, that doesn't have to be the rest of your life. You learn from it, so you never do that again. You never tolerate abuse again. You never accept it again. You can walk away as soon as you see red flags. You learn from it. It's not the end of the world. These experiences are here to help us elevate. Shayateen come into our life to help us understand where our weaknesses are. If there were no evil people in this world, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't know where our voids are. We wouldn't know where our traumas are. We wouldn't know our triggers. We wouldn't know where our wounds are. We wouldn't know which part of our past still affects us. They come into our lives and they show us this so that we can get better, we can elevate. So when you make the decision to go downhill and you fall into depression and lots of, revenge and fantasies of harming them and, I don't want to be a good person anymore, I hate being a good person. Being a good person got me nowhere. When you turn into that person, that a narcissist as well, then you've basically wasted the opportunities that came to you for elevation. Always remember, shayateen al-ins and the jinn come into our lives to teach us where we can improve in our life and in our character. That's their purpose in the lives of believers. It's not just to, make our lives miserable. We allow them to make our lives miserable because we don't have boundaries. We allow them to do what they do to us. And that's what you have to forgive yourselves for. You can either allow the experience to empower you or cripple you. It's up to you. The end goal is to leave this world empowered. Right? We want to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doing the best we could. We want to meet Him proud of ourselves. We want to meet Him, in the best state possible. We want to meet Allah with a sound heart. Okay, because only people with good hearts who tried their best in this life to elevate their nafs will be saved. And we don't know when or how we're going to die. Sudden death can be good or bad, right? You can either leave this world at the peak of your good deeds, or you can leave this world like oppressors and psychopaths and narcissists at the peak of your sins. It's up to you. Every day you make a choice, and that choice will determine how you will leave this world. And just before I wrap up this podcast, as promised, I will go back to verse 112 in Surah Al-An'am, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And so we have made for every prophet enemies, devil, humans and jinn, whispering to one another with elegant words of deception. Had it been your Lord's will, they would not have done such a thing, so leave them and their deceit. So sometimes when I coach narcissists in sessions, they say to me, what chance do we have if Allah has already chosen that we are not to be guided? Because had it been our Lord's will, we would not have done such a thing. Alright, so Allah made us do this. And this question is answered in Surah Al-Qasas, verse 56, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet ﷺ, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. You surely cannot guide whoever you like, O Prophet, but it is Allah who guides whoever He wills, and He knows best who are fit to be guided. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only guide people who want to be guided. So you may try your best to help someone get better. You may encourage them to go to therapy. They may show you that they need help, but they don't want to be helped. And Allah knows that in their heart. They may pretend to want to change. They may pretend to, go to therapy so that they can improve in their behavior, but they have no intention to change. They have no intention to improve anything in their life or in the marriage. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide them. Okay, only people who seek Allah, they seek help, they seek to be rescued, will be helped by Allah. And that's why, you see lots of non-Muslims be guided to Islam, because they're looking for answers. They're looking for a solution. They're looking for, peace and a better life. And they're looking for a purpose to their life. They're looking for a reason to live. So Allah guides them. And to be guided means to be taken on a spiritual journey until you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This journey could take a year, it could take a few weeks, it could take a few days. Only Allah knows. But the experiences that you will have during that journey of guidance will take you to Allah. But to be guided means that you need to work on your inner self. You need to work on your nafs and elevating your nafs. You need to want a better life. You need to want to be better. You need to want to be away from evil and your evil environment and, your bad behavior. You have to have a deep desire for that. When you do, Allah opens doors of guidance for you. And that's the biggest risk you'll ever have. To be guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because your inner state is in need of improvement and you're working on it. Okay? When you work on it, Allah will guide you. So many doors will open for you. So many. So because guidance is a rizq, Allah says that had it been your Lord's will to give you that rizq, they would not have done such a thing. So this rizq is only given to you when you do the work. When you have a sincere intention to change and be better. If you don't have that, you will not receive the rizq of guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's that simple. Okay? It is that simple. Because Allah gives to whom He wills. It's a gift. Allah will give rizq to those who will appreciate it. And that's why He chooses who He gives it to. Not everyone will have the same rizq. Not everyone will be guided. Because if you are someone who did not appreciate the lifelines Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already sent you in abundance, then you will not be guided. It will be Allah's will that you are not guided. Because out of His mercy, He sent you lifelines through different people and different avenues and different creatures so that you can get better. He sent you a good spouse. He sent you wonderful children. He sent you opportunities to do charity. He sent you opportunities to do so much good with your wealth, with your health, with your position, with your status. But you chose to do the opposite. You chose to obey Iblis. So why would Allah allow you to be guided when you still haven't repented properly? In Surah Ar-Ra'd, verse 11, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says as well in that verse, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Indeed, Allah will never change the state of a nation, the state of a people, until they change what's in themselves first. So if you're not changing what's in yourself, you can forget being guided. And that's a terrible way to live. Terrible. You can't expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you when you're still indulging in sins, you're still arrogant, you're still continuing with your behavior, and you haven't redeemed yourself or made amends with the people you abused. You're still so insincere in your repentance. You don't mean it. You don't really want to change because you're very comfortable doing what you're doing. You're very comfortable being and playing the victim. You're very comfortable abusing others and dominating others and making everyone fear you. You're not going to get guided. So don't blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. Blame yourselves. Okay? I'll leave it here. I'll wrap it up. I hope that you found the podcast beneficial. I pray that inshallah, you got your answers from this. I'm sorry, I know it's very long. I really do try, but it's impossible. Khalas, it's my nature. I can't help it. I just really hope that me going into such detail is helpful for people. And if you're dealing with malignant psychopaths in your life, may Allah rescue you. May you find the strength to leave. And I also pray that these psychopaths wake up before it's too late so that other people don't have to suffer as well. So may Allah bless you. Thank you for listening until now, if you're still with me. Until the next podcast, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.